Kevin?
Almost. Yeah. We get started and
Recording in progress.
All right, we'd like to welcome everyone to the Provo Municipal Council work meeting. It is July 14th, 2026. It is 1:00 p.m. Do we have Gary on Zoom, Kevin?
we
Not yet?
do not yet.
Okay. Are there more people in the back? All right. We'll have a roll call of elected officials. We have Councillor Jeff Whitlock. We have Councillor Becky Bogdan, myself, Catrice McKay. We have Councillor Rachel Whipple. And we expect others imminently. All this is a public meeting. Only the presenters and those invited by the council may speak or ask questions unless otherwise invited by the chair. Please wait to speak until called on by the council chair. When speaking, please be sure to use your microphone so that the record is clear and those attending virtually can hear you. Please also be sure to limit side conversations as they interfere with the audio recording. And if you need to have side conversations, please step out of the work meeting. It is proposed that we approve the following minutes: September 23rd, 2025 council meeting and December 16th, 2025 council meeting, May 26th, 2026 council meeting, and May 23rd, 2026 work meeting. Are there any objections or requested changes? Seeing none, I will declare the minutes approved by unanimous consent. All right, our first presentation is regarding the Mountainland Association of Governments, or MAG, as we always call it. So we are lucky to have like the three heavy hitters here today. We have Lenise Davenport, the MPO director of MAG, Kevin Felt, the transportation planning manager, and Bob Allen, the transportation programming manager. We had them come. I've been going to the MPO meetings, and they volunteered that they've been going to a lot of the council meetings. And so one thing I realized when I started going to MPO meetings is that we just knew nothing about that. And whereas in our form of government, the council is over 100% the master transportation plan and the budget, that these are things that are good for us to be aware of, and the coordination that we have with MAG as far as funding and the big projects that we could never do on our own. So go ahead. That's what we're starting with.
Awesome. Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. And I have it here. Do you want me here or there?
The podium's
Awesome.
But if anyone stands up to give comment while you're going, they'll use this one.
Okay. Thank you so much. All right. So thank you, Madam Chair. As noted, my name is Lenise Davenport. I'm the MPO director for the Mountainland Association of Governments. We provided a presentation that we'll run through, but importantly, like Chair McKay noted, we're really here to share the work that we do with you all in partnership with you. And invite you to ask questions and participate in the dialogue moving forward. We do have a chunk of time on the agenda today. I don't know that we'll need all of that time unless we get into a heavy Q&A session. But we do have a hard stop at 1:50. Just wanted to put that out up front. So let's see. So I'll kick us off if we can go to the next. Do you want me to do
You're connected.
Got it. Thank you, sir. All right, before we get into the MPO, or the Metropolitan Planning Organization, we're going to start with what MAG is as an organization. So the Mountainland Association of Governments, or MAG, is one of Utah's 7 association of governments. And really all that means is Utah is broken up into these regions that have regional organizations that represent regions. So for the MAG region, we represent Utah, Summit, and Wasatch counties. We have a sister AOG and MPO to the north of us, the Wasatch Front Regional Council. They represent 5 counties, and then you can see all 29 counties in the state of Utah are represented by these AOGs. We were created in the early 70s, and you can see on here why we were created, essentially to collaborate regionally. So our biggest strength as an organization is working with all of the cities and counties within our region, and working across jurisdictional boundaries. We also connect communities to resources. That's a really important element of what we do. Essentially, all of the programs that we administer, the grants, the funding, the technical assistance, it is all essentially meant to help local governments or assist local governments in some way. Yes, please.
Go ahead.
So
sorry.
this isn't critical, but I was just curious, what criteria did they use to
create these associations? You know, geographic, I would assume. Was it based on transportation corridors? Was it based on growing demographics? Just high level, how did they decide?
They were created in the early 70s by the governor then. And it was really based, I see Bob wants to add to this, but hold on. And it was really based on just working together. But okay, Bob, go ahead. Yes.
Actually, my understanding is if you look at the map and you think watersheds, that's a lot of what the AOGs were based off of in the beginning was water planning. And so if you kind of think of the Provo River watershed, that's how MAG got Summit County, Wasatch County, Utah County.
If you think about, are you get COGS? Do we have COGS? Is there a COG that represents? Okay, some counties have what they call councils of governments, where they bring together all of the cities and sometimes school districts and other entities within their county or multi-county region. As a way to basically create that conversation. And so they thought, let's just take it to that even bigger level at the regional level and get people coordinating. But thank you for the question. I invite lots more as we continue here. In terms of the work that we do, we are kind of divided into departments. We have an aging department. We used to have a community and economic development department. A lot of that work has actually been assumed within my department, which is the planning for growth, or the planning department. And we'll get into more about the work that we do within the planning department here in just a moment. So, here we are, the planning department. Okay, so we're essentially a bunch of little mini organizations within the Mountainland Association of Governments organization as a whole. A lot of the work that we do is designated by either the federal government or the state government, and in some cases, even local government. So for example, as the Metropolitan Planning Organization, or MPO, we received a federal designation from the U.S. Department of Transportation and the U.S. DOT through FHWA, Federal Highway Administration, and FTA, Federal Transit Administration, help govern the work that we do in terms of the MPO, or Metropolitan Organization Planning, which is essentially transportation planning. We also administer a rural planning organization, or RPO. That work is very similar to the work we do for Utah County through the MPO, but it's for Summit and Wasatch counties with no federal assistance, and then also therefore no federal sort of guidelines that we have to fall within for Summit and Wasatch counties. Our main product or deliverable that we create as an MPO is the Regional Transportation Plan. Our Regional Transportation Plan is long range, meaning we look to the future. We look to the year 2055. We consider all modes of transportation: road, active transportation, and transit. And we phase it based on or assume a timeline of transportation projects based on what we call fiscal constraint, so estimated funding sources. Kevin is going to talk more about the RTP when he comes up for his turn later in the presentation. The other major program that we administer is the Transportation Improvement Program, or the TIP program. This is what Bob is going to talk about a little bit later in the presentation. And really what that means is, okay, we as an organization, we look to the future, we put all of our future hats on, we're crossing jurisdictional boundaries, thinking regionally. These are the transportation needs, those are identified in our plan. Then we say, how do we think, can we fund the projects that are identified in the plan? We as an organization have a small-ish funding pot to do that. That's the TIP. So that can fund some smaller capital projects, regional capital projects within our county. We administer a handful of other programs, and we'll get into these later too, and happy to talk through more of this. But it's important for you to know that we administer a community development block grant program whose objective is to benefit low and moderate income communities. We administer a technical advisory grant, technical assistance to governments, TAG, technical assistance to governments program that implements transportation and land use visions, plans, and studies. We coordinate economic development regionally. And importantly, I'm going to finish with this one, the strategic vision bullet point here. A couple of years ago, we worked with all of our member cities and counties, including, of course, Provo City, to identify what should our region look like, what's our regional vision for the future, not just transportation, but transportation and some land use. So this is called the Wasatch Choice Vision. We have some handouts that just a little like a little pamphlet thing we'll hand out at the end of our presentation that has a QR code that you can scan and learn more about the Wasatch Choice Vision. But essentially, we're growing very rapidly, and we have a plan for our future. And that plan is the Wasatch Choice Vision, and that plan is the Regional Transportation Plan. And both of those have been created in partnership with you and all of the other cities in Utah County. All right, so what exactly is an MPO, or Metropolitan Planning Organization? Like I said, we're federally designated, and we're responsible for creating an RTP and administering a TIP. We're governed importantly by the local elected officials that make up Utah County. So every mayor within Utah County is on our board. We also have all 3 county commissioners as a member of our board. And importantly, because we're creating transportation plans and working towards implementing those plans, we have to have our transportation partners. So UDOT, UTA, the Department of Air Quality, as well as FHWA are also members of our board, the MPO board. Yes, please. The FHWA, that's the Federal Highway Administration. Yep. There's the Federal Transit Administration too. So it's really important that we are getting those because they provide a lot of the funding that we do for the work that we do. So they set the parameters, and then they want to make sure that they have, a regular check-in on how well we're meeting those goals and objectives that we identify. Also importantly is the last bullet on this what we do list, which is all of the planners and engineers within the communities within Utah County are part of what we call a technical advisory committee, or a TAC. That TAC, they're the first persons that see the work that we do. We vet all of the work that we do through that TAC body. And then the TAC, essentially, it's like a planning commission to a city council. The TAC is like our planning commission. They vet it, they look at it, they review it, and they say, yes, we think this should go to the board, or it's maybe not ready to go to the board yet. So that's our technical experts, our staff. They're the TAC, and then they report to the governing body, which is the MPO board. Yes.
Can you give us an example of who would be on the TAC? Is it like members from different cities, like
Yeah.
like Works Department?
Yeah. So Vern Kiesler from Provo is your representative on our TAC, on our board. And then Gordon, I think you've attended a few of our TAC meetings as well. We'd love to have Gordon. Gordon's amazing. Bob, are there any other folks that you can think of that have come that participate in the TAC from Provo?
Not from Provo. Typically, it's either like the city engineer or the public works director or the planning director, or someone of that level. And for the last probably 2 to 3 years, I was referred to that person. And Bird's been very active. We love her. He's me too.
We don't.
Well, what I'm kind of wondering too is, from what I've heard, the funding is allocated in a certain way where this, and tell me if I'm wrong, this TAC team will go out and like look at all of these projects, and then they'll come back and they'll say, this one should be a high priority, this one should be the next priority, this one should be the next priority, and then it's voted on by the mayors.
Yeah, basically that's the TIP prioritization process, and essentially we'll get into this in a minute, but high level, yes, there is a technical score that MAG staff looks at, and then there is the technical advisory committee that's made up of all those folks, and they score it, and those 2 scores come together to become like 50-50, become 1 score. And then important to note that it's a decision informing tool, not a decision making tool, i.e. 1 through 25 isn't the final, it's the starting point.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Excellent. All right. And with that, actually, my portion is done, and I'll turn the time over to Kevin Felt, who's going to unpack the RTP for you even more. And then I'll come back up later. Thanks.
Thank you for having us today. This is a good opportunity for us to hopefully impart upon you what we do and how we can court. Yes.
Know that Gary Garrett is now online, and that we've had Travis and Craig join us.
Thank you. So, like what Bob was saying, there's two things here. There's the regional transportation plan, which is the long-term view. And Bob's part is the transportation improvement program, which is the short-term view. And I'll kind of get to that in a little bit too. So what we do in the regional transportation plan is we're looking at roads, transit, active transportation, all forms of mobility within the urbanized area of Utah County. What we're trying to do is ensure the safe and efficient movement of all mobility such that goods and services and other things can get moved around. So when we develop this, we do it across all city boundaries. You guys develop your local plans. We take that plan, incorporate it into ours, and then incorporate Orem's and Spanish Fork and Salem and Eagle Mountain and all these other cities within the urbanized area. We compile those, and then we start to look at the regionally significant projects. A lot of your plans are going to have local streets and things. We're looking at the regionally significant projects. Roadway facilities, for instance, such as Center Street or State Street, I-15, the real big projects, big roads. And on the transit side, we're looking at projects that are like UVX and Front Runner and those kind of things. The more, not the local bus that goes kind of everywhere. We're just looking at the regionally significant ones that kind of really impact everybody. And then on the active transportation side, we're looking at those projects that connect to the Utah Trail Network primarily. So again, we go across city boundaries. We look at all of the different jurisdictions within the urbanized area of Utah County, which is pretty much all of Utah County. We use a qualitative and a quantitative data analysis. As Bob mentioned, what we'll do is we'll kind of gather all these plans. We will then come up with some additional projects possibly, and then we'll look at those and kind of initially screen them. We'll come back and do a more technical analysis, which is where the point we are right now. And what we do there is we score the projects. We have a long list of projects. And what we'll do is then provide that information to the decision bodies, first the technical advisory committee, and then they'll make a recommendation to the MPO board. And then eventually we phase the projects, which projects go in the first 10 years, which projects go in the second 10 years, and which projects go in the last 10 years. Then we have an additional category of projects that are called exploratory, things that are just kind of being dreamed up and those kind of things. We're looking at the long range needs, not what's in the next 4, 5, 6, 7 years. We're looking at, again, things very, very long term. And we try to do that with the trends. You know, if we had done this plan now before COVID, we do it every 4 years, but before COVID, we had a different travel behavior, different trip making behavior amongst our residents. And things have changed. You know, we now have these technologies where people can join us online. People can have remote meetings. We don't work a full week in the office. We do some telecommuting, those kind of things. So things have changed. So those trends are changing. The other trends that are changing are the amount of people that are moving into Utah County, the amount of jobs that are moving into Utah County. So we look at all those and we kind of try to project that out for 25 to 30 years or so. Again, updated every 4 years. And the one that we are currently doing that will be hopefully adopted next July is the 2055 Horizon Year RTP. So what it is, it's again a unified transportation blueprint for Utah County. It's a plan that aids you in your growth. Where are these facilities going to be, and how do I plan my growth around them? Improve regional mobility needs, and really, it also, again, as I mentioned, we're using your plans to help become the foundation for our plan. It projects financial needs and funds. And that's really important from the standpoint of every project in our plan has to have enough money for it to be moved forward. So what we do is we look at all that list of projects. We find out how much each of them cost. And then we look at how much revenue we anticipate over the first 10, the second 10, and the last 10 years. And we do not assign money to any particular project. We just know that we have $100 million to spend and we have $100 million worth of projects. So those become part of our plan. So we also don't allocate, like I said, we don't allocate money. Yes.
You have $100 million of projects and you allocate 100 that are all funded, right?
They are.
What do you mean you don't do specific projects? Because
So
more.
there's a lot of different funding sources. There's federal funding, there's state funding, there's some local funding that helps the state and federal funding as our matching. There's transit money, there's highway money, there's active transportation money. So we add up all this money and we find out how much total we have, and then we just go down and assign projects to be able to be funded. It's almost like you have you want to purchase a home and you've got 3 or 4 different bank accounts or 3 or 4 different funding sources for yourself. And you don't know which funding source you're going to use to buy that house yet, but you know you have enough money amongst those 3 or 4 sources to buy the house. That kind of an idea.
Can I add something to this one?
I think it's important to note that within each of those phases, we have a needs list and we have a fiscally constrained list. So we certainly do not have enough money for all of the projects that we've identified in each of the phases of the RTP.
Yeah.
And so therefore, we know it's a need, you know, when it's needed, but we just don't have enough money. So there's a couple of different types of projects that it comes.
Yeah, that's my next part is that, so we have the $100 million in the first phase. We have a list of 10 projects, let's say, but we also have a need for another 5 projects. Those 5 projects in the first phase that are needed end up in the second phase that could be funded. And so we kind of go through the process that way.
Councilor Becky? So I heard, I'm not really talking about it, it's not just me, like former public directors and stuff like that. But I've heard that you get through the first phase first before you start looking at the second phase. Is that true?
Yes. So we look at revenues. What revenues do we anticipate between 2027 and 2037 when this will be adopted? And when we say, let's say again, $100 million. And we know from 2037 to 2047, we're going to have $150 million. But we know that in the first phase, even though we only have $100 million available, we may have $125 million of need. So that other $25 million worth of projects gets moved to the second phase, which then becomes part of that $150 million that we have available. Does that make sense?
So you got pushing it out there.
Becky, can you turn me?
I think Becky's also, weren't you asking if one project, right?
It could.
No, okay.
Yeah.
Well, but it could be. Like, for instance, we've got this project in our plan for crossing Utah Lake. That is going to take up most, if not all, of the money in one phase. So it might have to be, and it's going to be a long project.
So you would have to phase that project out, is what you're
Yes.
saying?
Yes.
Phase 1 in the first 10 years, phase 2 and then.
Yes. And another similar type situation would be the Central Corridor Transit corridor, where we might start in phase 1 just funding an enhanced bus service. And then in phase 2, we might fund a BRT type service. And finally, in phase 3, we would fund a light rail service in that same corridor. So we kind of step into it, if you will. Or some projects, and again, the lake crossing might be a good example in that initially we put it in as a 4-lane roadway. But we know that eventually 15 years from now, we're going to need 6 lanes. So we just put it in the first part as a 4-lane, find the fleet for the additional 2 lanes later on, kind of an idea.
But just to get back to the needs, that first phase, that first 10 years, those are the critical needs, even though you
Yeah.
might have needs that are 5 in the next 10 years, which
Yeah.
would be 20 years out. But you try to work through those first 10 years
Yes.
before you start hitting those other
Yes.
years. But if you don't get through all of them, then that gets regrouped down to
Yeah.
in the 20-year phase.
Right, and again, we do this every 4 years, so some projects that might be in the second phase this time
Move
around
up
might move to the first phase the next time,
or might get pushed down.
or might be moved to the third phase if they're not as big a priority anymore.
Gotcha. And that's all determined by the scoring system, the rubric that's,
Well, it's determined by the scoring system as far as how we rank them. When it comes to actually putting them in a phase, there's a whole nother analysis that becomes a little more subjective, maybe a
Okay.
better way to put it. Sometimes, like Bob mentioned, a project might be ranking number 10 on the ranking list, but it might be a much more needed project politically, and it gets moved up a little bit maybe.
thanks.
So does that part then, is that more done by the MPO board or
Yeah.
that they're doing on votes?
Yes.
Counselor Whitlock.
One question I have is how there's the Utah's Unified Transportation Plan. How does
This-
that compare to
Yeah.
our specific RTP for MAG?
So RTP becomes an input
It's an
into
input
that,
into-
into that unified transportation plan, and all the other MPOs as well. Their plans, like we're doing, get put in as input, and then the regional plans get put in as input. Then the state kind of goes down that list.
And then when there's discrepancies, why do those typically happen?
Discrepancies.
Well, for example, I think in the current Utah Unified Transportation Plan, there's like 3 potential lake crossing
Oh.
versus in ours, there's just one. I'm just curious, like how those.
So
TBA.
that particular project in general, the different ones are possibilities. We've got one that's showing the
Center Street, Provo, one's.
yeah, we're trying to cost it out. So we'll just cost one of them out, and then the other 2 are still possibilities.
Got it.
The other thing to think about with all this is some of the work we do gets ahead of some other more detailed work. For instance, on that particular lake crossing you're referring to, UDOT is currently doing what's called a planning environmental linkage study. We call it a PEL. And that PEL is a precursor to a National Environmental Policy Act, a NEPA project. And what that PEL is trying to do is they're trying to identify an alignment or alignments that serve the northwest part of Utah County and the northern part of Utah County. How do they get from Eagle Mountain, Saratoga Springs, Fairfield over to I-15, for instance? And then once our plan will be done before that is, so we're going to put in what we think is the right answer. And then a couple of years from now, when they finish that project, they may come up with a different solution that's more, because we're looking at it in a lot more detail than we will. So we would then amend our plan to put that new alignment in if that's what happens. I think the important thing here on this slide really is this bottom part here, in that any project that receives federal or state funding has to be in our plan. Not worried about the local funding. Local funding can help as far as matching the federal and state funding, but anytime they receive federal and state funding, particularly state roads, federal roads, those kind of things, that has to be in our plan for it to receive that type of funding. And I'll just touch on this real quickly. What we're doing right now is we kind of talks about some of the process already, is we're going through the project measures and kind of how we weight these projects against all the goals that we have. In September, the TAC and board will receive information and adopt a final ranking list, not a phasing list, but a ranking list. And then we'll start our initial phasing process in October. And the final project phasing and draft regional transportation plan will be done in November. This phasing part is a really, really important part of this whole process, because even though the projects may be ranked 1 to 100, they get kind of maybe jumbled up a little bit in the project phasing. What becomes more of a need from a subjective standpoint. Then in January, we'll receive the approval to go ahead and do what we call our air quality public involvement process in February. And then in March, we'll take anything that the legislature provides to us any output from the February public involvement process, readjust the plan a little bit, take it back to the TACM board. And then in April and May, the board will have their final opportunities to adjust things. And in June, hopefully adopt it. But the real big thing is this ranking piece comes from technical analysis. This phasing piece comes from more of a community input analysis, if you will. Yes.
So, our master transportation plan informs your RTP.
Yes.
And then there's the input of your board, the MPO board,
Mhm.
that is the final approval process or
Yes.
input process.
Yes. Yeah. Now, the part we take from your local plan is just the regionally significant roadways.
Right.
We're not worried about,
Yourself.
yeah, those kind of things. Or First North or something like that. Those improvements, those are completely local. Those are not ones that we're gonna put into our plan.
I was gonna say it's a third
Yeah,
south of Utah.
Okay, well,
Example,
I'm
Jeff.
not familiar enough with it, but
But like or north.
Yes.
Yeah, something we're gonna have to worry about, unless you want.
Hold on, I'm gonna tell my district you don't care about it.
We care, but we're not gonna dictate anything.
well, if you want to federalize it, I mean, and then there's a whole nother ball of string that goes with the federal project. So we try to unfederalize things as much as we can.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, it sounds like 99% of the roads and transportation corridors and such, in Provo, aren't really concerned with.
Right.
Can you, and I'm putting you on the spot here, can you list your top 3 or 4 that we really need to make sure that our transportation master plan aligns well with? Are there things that you're looking at right now and saying, hey, Provo, make sure you get this right because this is really important to us? Or
Yes, there are a couple. Primarily I-15, for instance, but that
Okay.
really isn't going to fall in your plan per se. But we do have a corridor, a Lakeview corridor that comes off of the Geneva Road area and comes down past the airport and crosses Provo Bay and it goes towards Spanish Fork, something like that we would want to have. A lot of what we would be most concerned about or find most helpful are those local roadways that connect to these regional roadways. How can we better improve access to the regional roadways? How can we better improve dispersion from the regional roadways? Those
Okay.
types of things.
Another question I have. Sure. Under your project measures weight ranking, what are some examples of the types of weights you put on, criteria analyses you do?
Yeah, so we've got a list we have 5 goals, and then there are probably 15 or so criteria that we're measuring these goals on. Some of them include, does the facility go through a high growth area? Does it connect to some of the Wasatch Choice Vision centers that would be in Provo, for instance? On the transit side might be something like amount of population within a quarter mile of the transit service, within walking distance, in other words. So a lot of those types of things. So we're just going through that process, getting that finished right now. And then the weights, we're going to weight each goal. And I don't have them memorized off the top of my head, but it's like access to opportunities, safety, air quality, some of those kind of things.
Are those published now, or you're working on them still?
The goals are published now, yes. And one of the things we'll be asking the technical advisory committee, the board in August is, okay, here's the project rankings with a static 25% or 20% for each of the 5 goals. Well, it's not. The goals are also applied by mode. So we're not ranking a transit project against a roadway project or an active transportation project against a roadway project, because it would just fail every time. So what we're doing is we're taking each mode, roadways, transit, and active transportation, and ranking the projects separately, scoring them against each other.
Are those doing 3 modes?
The 3 primary modes, yeah.
They're like do trails fall in active transit?
Yes, and the active transportation is sort of a catch-all for like the scooters and bicycles and walking and all kinds of things that aren't motorized, basically. So then what we'll do is we'll take this static percentage of a weight and then ask the TAC and the board to say, well, gee, you know, we value safety more than we value access to opportunities. Or we value air quality more than we value safety, or whatever the decision is. And so those rankings may change to 40% and 20, 20, 20 or something like that. But the idea is that there's this opportunity to adjust the weighting, which will then adjust the priority somehow. Because it'll affect, you know, one project might do better if it's weighted higher on safety and lower on access or something.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? All right, I'll let Bob talk about the real good stuff.
The real good stuff. I'm going to talk about the tip really quick, but I want to step back. Council member, you asked about FHWA, and I think it's really important that we highlight FHWA because the Federal Highway Administration, basically, they're the ones that tell us how to put together an RTP, our regional transportation plan, and how we need to put together the tip, right? And so they're kind of not our bosses, but they're the cops that say, this is the law, this is what you're going to do. So when we talk about strange things like fiscal constraint or air quality conformity, those are all rules that are given to us by the federal government that we have to follow in developing our processes. And I bring that up because it's really important. We talked about funding and fiscal constraint, and it's really important when we talk about the RTP, we're not really talking about real money when it comes to fiscal constraint. Fiscal constraint is essentially an air quality exercise that we're told we have to do to make sure that all the things that we do, we're still going to have decent air quality and we can afford in the next 20, 30 years, we can afford to do those things that will ensure we have air quality. But when a plan is you could say funded or fiscally constrained in the RTP, that does not mean there is any real money assigned to it, okay? Just like your general plan is kind of hey, this is who we're going to be in the future, and these are some guidelines that we want to follow. There's no real money allocated through the plan. But you also have probably, Gordon, a public facilities plan or capital facilities plan, right? And that's just like 5 years out into the future. And that's where you really are saying, in 2027, we have $10 million and we're going to build a new sewer plant or whatever the case may be. That's what the tip is. So the tip is our capital facilities plan, or what are we going to do in the next 5 to 6 years? And what real money are we going to build? What projects are we going to build with what? It's federally required. And this is basically the implementation arm of the RTP. This is how we implement it. It lists all regionally significant. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so really quickly, does that mean the tip comes from the RTP and that is what triggers the actual job?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. If you thought, how does an idea become a project? The very high level step is a problem is recognized or projected in the future. We go through the RTP process to identify, okay, what's the problem? What's the right solution for it? Let's get it adopted in the RTP. It becomes fiscally constrained phase 1. And then it goes to the tip process or the implementation.
This is your equivalent of our CIP.
Yes, exactly. It lists all regionally significant projects for all transportation modes. It's not just MAG funded projects, it's UDOT funded projects, UTA funded projects. So if you looked at our tip right now, it shows $3.6 billion worth of projects that will be funded in Utah County between now and 2031.
Wow.
Of that, only 500 million of that is actual MAG money.
Wow.
Most of it is big UDOT facilities. And so you kind of have to separate when a project is in the RTP and it wants to become a funded actual rig to dig up and build things. There's kind of 2 ways to go at it. There's the UDOT process where it's the big stuff, the freeways, the interchanges, the state streets, those big things. MAG can't afford those things because We just don't have enough revenue. UDOT and the Transportation Commission funds those. They go through a process that we won't go into right now, but I'm happy to unpack it with you at any time. And then there's the MAG process where you have a very small budget that we try and phase and implement as much as we can. That was how we funded the 2 stages of the airport, the MAG's funding, the new bridge on 820 North, you know, yada, yada, yada. A lot of those kinds of projects are funded that way. We identify funding sources and we have to do fiscal constraint. We have to show, because these are all projections, so we have to show the federal government. We say we're going to spend $120 million in the next, in 27 and 28. We have to show that that's reasonable. Next 4 to 5 years encompasses all that. We update it annually, but MAG only selects projects every 2 years. And then I know we're running out of time, but I want to leave time for question and answers. This is essentially what I just told you about how an idea becomes a project. We find a problem or a need, we develop it and put it in the RTP, and then it splits into those 2 processes of what's the right way to fund the project. And with that, was our schedule. We're basically at the end of our schedule. But I think before we move on, we know that there are some specific projects maybe you wanted to talk a little bit about, like 820 North or some of those others. Now's probably the time, just so we don't overstay our welcome.
One thing I think I just gathered that, so we were supposed to do an expansion of 800 between Freedom and State Street.
Okay, yeah.
So that was lined up, and we already own the easements and the hospital's on board.
Sure.
And that's just it's kind of what you referred to. That's a huge interconnector between 2 major
that is a regionally significant road.
Yeah. And so it didn't happen in January like we anticipated. And so you said 2 years. Does that mean our next chance to get that project done is the beginning of 2028?
Essentially, we will start the next selection cycle. Our cycle it's every 2 years. It takes about 8 months to go through all the steps. So beginning in the winter of late 2027 is when we'll kick it off. We'll start saying, hey, everybody, bring us your ideas. And we will finalize that process and say, these are the projects that are going to be funded in August of 2028.
Okay.
Now, something important to point out, that is going to fund projects that will be built in 2031 and 2032.
Right. It's not like that.
Yes. Okay, perfect.
And on that note, so the mayor is our representative on the MPO. So if she doesn't put that forward, can someone else put that forward on the MPO? Like, can a county commissioner put it forward?
Well, the county certainly, they submit projects as well. We actually had Provo City, the Provo Bike Collective years ago requested a project. It was kind of understood that Provo supported that. That is getting into the fine splitting hairs that I'm not necessarily ready to say, could you submit it versus if the mayor didn't think.
Somebody on the board, like a county commissioner.
A county commissioner, certainly. There would certainly need to be some understanding between the county that's submitting it and the city, so to speak. We would hope that gets figured out beforehand, but I guess technically that is possible. Yes. Good question. Do we want to talk specific projects? Tell me what you want to, how can I answer? What can I answer?
One thing you mentioned, the freeway as being a big thing, but not involving you. But doesn't
it does involve us.
That does
heavily.
And that's part of, I believe we have a freeway entrance on our master transportation plan.
On 820 or where?
I think it is. But just the idea that it's there like as something in the future. I don't even know if we specified the exact spot, but.
So if we're talking about I-15, there in our current plan right now, we show that I-15 is unfortunately, there's too many eggs in I-15, and there are improvements that are identified that need to take place on I-15 in the next 30 years. We're still working with UDOT to figure out exactly what that looks like. Is that a collector distributor system, blah, 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 lots of different things. We're kind of to the point where we can't really just add more lanes because there's a certain point with a road where past, I think it's 7 lanes, the more, if you add another lane, it actually reduces.
Yeah.
And so we can't do that, but it would be things on the sides of the freeway to help the freeway function, because really friction, people getting on and off creates friction, and that's what slows down
Kind
the
of like
freeway.
you did the whole 215 thing.
Exactly. Or say, Lehigh Technology Corridor, where you have one-way frontage roads on each side. Or you could look at Salt Lake, where there's the collector distributor. If you're getting off on 21st or 9th, 7th, whatever those three are,
Yeah.
you get off once and then you don't touch the freeway till you go all through that and back on. Things like that.
Okay.
There are certain solutions that need to be made. Also, currently in the RTP is identified a future interchange in that 800, 820-ish north area that's been in the plan for some time. And there also is a widening project on 820 north. I believe that is in your RTP, in your transportation plan. And we've taken that for years, looked at it, it says there are certainly things that make sense. We makes sense enough that we put it in our plan. And we will continue to, through this process, look at it and analyze it to make sure it makes sense, to go through the prioritization process, et cetera, et cetera. Does that mean it automatically gets in? No, there's certainly a process to that. And essentially, I mean, just from past experience and looking at past numbers, it really comes down to Center Street and the Parkway is why that specific project, it would need to be needed. You house the 2 largest employers in the entire county, the hospital and BYU. And you can see through the modeling that that's where people want to go, whether 820 is there or not. And so it's not a silver bullet, but it's certainly a helpful project from looking at a very high level. It's impactful, there's no doubt. But
Yeah, we have over 10,000 employees just with those 2.
yeah. I think just off the back of my memory, we were looking at a little bit of modeling today. And I can instead of bringing up the link, I can just tell you, if we didn't do 820 North, University or Center Street would probably add around 15,000 trips a day. It's from more than what it is today. 15,000 trips a day is a lot. It was basically going from 41,000 to, well, I think it was 44,000 or something like that right now today, up to almost 60,000 trips a day.
It's a terrible road for.
On what time frame?
That was just out to 2055, but the thing is you're it's a phase 1 project, meaning it's one that we see is needed in the next 10-ish years. So it's kind of one of those needs to be happening sooner rather than later. But again, we work for y'all, and that's, we're here to give you the technical information, and our board will make those decisions. I know we're running out of time, so I just wanted
Other
to.
questions?
I had some general questions that people wanted to ask about.
And can I will also happily offer, and Lenise will throw a rock at me if I'm saying something wrong. We are always available. If we don't have time, hit us up. We'll sit down and talk with you, have a conversation, meeting, whatever you'd like.
And I'm just gonna, let me add to that. I brought some cards we can hand out. We can leave these with you. We brought some information about Unified Transportation Plan, which you brought up earlier. So please take a look at that. It has all of the FPO regional transportation plans in it, and then a little thing about the Wasatch Shores vision. But we do have like a minute or so.
Well, I mean, it was important. I really wanted the council to understand what you guys do and that they can be informed about these things and what's happening and how it's so, I mean, it's a big deal to our city, and we are over the master transportation plan in the city. And I guess we just wanted to make sure that you knew that we back the master transportation plan and we don't have plans to change it. And we want you to know that.
Yeah, duly noted. Duly noted. And maybe just in closing, from MAG's perspective, we love working with Provo. We have great working relationship with the city, with the mayor, with this body. We're happy again. Anytime you have a question, reach out to us. Vern is a wealth of knowledge, you know, that we love working with him, and we can coordinate and get you the information you need.
Okay, Gary Garrett, he is traveling. He is on Zoom. He has a question.
Okay. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Gary. Are you muted, Gary? We can't hear you.
Okay, sorry about that. Yes, a great presentation. Thank you. Actually, I think most of my questions were answered relative to budget, where the funding comes from. It sounds like your annual budget varies year to year, just depending on those sources of funds. It would be hard for you to say what your annual budget is. And then I had questions on the specific projects, bringing this down to Provo, that we have queued up, or if they are in exploratory stages. But I think those were answered as well. I think generally, I would just like to make a motion to make it clear to you all who have come today. Thank you very much. That to make clear our council's support of the current master transportation plan and the projects that we have currently in common with MAG. I'd like to make that as a motion.
All right. You want to second that motion?
Yeah, I would second that motion.
So we often vote in our, just to make sure that people understand what our intent is.
Very well.
Any discussion on the motion? Councillor Bogdan.
I know they have a minute to leave, but some of these things are really impactful, like that 800 North.
Very much.
That's a mess right now. And rather than 2031, that needs to be done sooner rather than later. And the west side is growing. It's not just Provo's west side, it is west side everywhere. And when I've talked to some of our former transportation people, they're like, you know, people have to get to BYU, people have to get to the hospital. Even people on my side of the tracks, those train tracks are awful. And to have something come over there, even if it's just a freeway on and off ramp, you know, that makes a huge difference. Some of these things really need to happen. And so I'm in support of this, because we do need these things on schedule, and they need to match up with our needs.
I remember when I ran the first time, I got really educated on the west side, because that wasn't an area I was terribly familiar with. And I remember a neighborhood chair walked me through the west side and talked to me, and they were like, do you know how much time we would save to get an emergency if we had to get out, if there was a flood per se, or if we had people who need to go to an ambulance? Literally 5+ minutes could be saved, not having to deal with the tracks, not having to deal with the limited east to west connectivity, and having a freeway entrance right to 800, where it's right to the hospital. They just they're like, you know, we want this on the west side. Like, this is a huge, like, this is like life and death to us. And that wasn't even on my radar.
Sure.
But so yeah, it is interesting. And we have IHC presenting after you guys, but they do an incredible amount of ambulances coming from the south.
Certainly.
And coming from the surrounding areas to Provo. So you know, I had no idea the numbers that they do in just ambulance rides.
Not to mention the new medical school that's coming
Yes.
here, and not to mention that they're going to be, a level 1 trauma center?
I don't even need to present. You got it.
He educated us very well last year. But yeah, and so that's going to put more and more pressure to get there. But we all know on the west side that we're going to die in an emergency because we can't get out.
Well, let's hope.
All right, Councilor Hoban.
Well, I'm okay reaffirming our support of the current transportation master plan, but I do think, like you had mentioned, you have some updated models regarding 820, 800.
Great.
I think when we visited this 6 years ago, when I was newer on the council, frankly, I didn't feel like the modeling we had showed a huge need for that specific road to be. Yeah, I need to meet with you guys. And also, you know, frankly, if you don't get over the railroad tracks and past the school, nothing you do on 820 is going to matter, because you still get stuck at those areas and they still, you know. And so I'm okay reaffirming our support of the plan for now, but with the caveat that I think if we're going to make any changes to the plan moving forward, or, you know, if we're going to really move forward with some of these projects, like I think there just needs to be a comfort level that we have good data supporting this and that we have a good plan around that, as opposed to just saying like, yeah, we're going to allocate 100 million towards this and we'll figure it out. Right. It's hard for me to get behind it without understanding more nuances of the
It would
plan.
be to get into data, but don't have time today.
Yeah.
Councillor Christensen.
Yeah, I would agree. It's actually very hard, but did you have a comment?
I was just gonna kind of add to his, and something that's to be understood is when we put these projects in the RTP, we use sophisticated tools like the travel demand model and so forth. But at each stage of a project, more and more study is done. It would step to an environmental process where
Right.
even
COVID changed
impacts.
everything.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so I think
Yeah.
seeing updated, and maybe that's a follow-up presentation, maybe specifically for somebody from your team to come and show us like,
Happily to do
here is the modeling that we're looking at for 820, and here's why we feel it's important, and or rather why it makes sense if it is something we want to do. I think that could be really helpful for me to help inform my decision making moving forward.
Sure.
Councillor Whitlock.
Just from my perspective, I
guess you can
mean,
get
my
some
understanding
comment.
is these plans are updated every 5 to 10 years. We had a pandemic in the interim. I wasn't part of office, so I would like to see more data and go through the process with more thought before I would be able to vote for something like that.
Okay.
Craig didn't get to say his comment. I cut him
Yeah, go
off.
ahead,
So
Craig.
No, I think the points have been covered. Our job as a council is to balance things. And we're talking about significant trade-offs. And I think it is important to consider safety. It is important to consider access. It is important to consider neighborhoods. I mean, this is part of the balancing act that we must do. And so I support this future planning. Without this future planning, we end up in cul-de-sacs all over the place. And so I would be supportive of what the work that you're doing.
Okay. Well, we'll take a vote on the motion. Councillor Garrett,
Yes.
Councillor McKay, yes. Councillor Christensen,
Yes.
Councillor Whitlock,
No.
Councillor Bogdan,
Yes.
Councillor Hoban,
yes.
Councillor Whipple is not here, so that passes 6-1.
5-1.
5-1. Thank you.
We need a motion to ask them to come. I mean, not to ask them, but
No, we'll
I
get
mean,
it
with it, we can get it arranged.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to make
You
sure.
let us know, we'll come. You
I
say,
mean,
John.
we can't tell you what to do. I was saying internally, are we behind this? Having you guys come back.
We
That's all.
boss them around.
Yeah. Hey, we tell Mag what to do around here.
But I think it would be good for our public to listen to a presentation on
Yes.
H24.
Yeah, I would love to.
I'll just say then, thank you for your time. And if, again, please contact us if you have more questions. Sorry if we took more than our allotted time.
Thanks so much, Bob.
Very helpful.
You bet.
Thank you, Lenise and Kevin.
Thank you very much.
All right, next we have a presentation regarding an update from Intermountain Health Care. And presented by Kyle Hansen, the administrator for, well, what, you're like the president of Intermountain Health Care.
I have a couple of jobs.
It says big dog on his.
No, we're not.
I want one of your business cards. I need to see that.
If we're getting the presentation pulled up.
Big dog right there.
I did bring a friend, Janet Frank, it's our,
We love Janet.
is a leader over community outreach, so grateful for some time to chat with all of you today. We love being in the city of Provo, and as I've said before, don't have any plans to ever leave. Thank goodness, but wanted to just share maybe some ways that we're looking at the growth, listening to kind of the way that MAG goes about projecting that out and looking at transportation. We do a lot of this work looking out in similar timeframes, 30+ years, and trying to predict healthcare demand. And there's a lot of factors that obviously go into that: technology, drug development. Maybe GLP-1s will make it so that none of us need a hospital in the future. I doubt it, but anyway, wanted to just share some of that data with you and kind of answer questions that you might have in regards to what that means for the growth in our campus here in Provo. Because as the county grows, our hospital will grow, and it almost doesn't necessarily correlate to how fast Provo is growing population wise. So am I advancing? Is this?
You're good to go.
Perfect. Okay. So I won't bore you with statistics you've probably already seen many, many times. You know, our county's growing and projected to grow. I think these are pulled from the Gardner Institute. We work with some national consultants that help with master site planning for healthcare organizations and help us look at some of this and help us start to get an idea based on kind of utilization trends, changing demographics. You know, what kind of hospital bed needs are we talking about in certain geographical areas? We're not the only ones providing hospital care. Obviously, Intermountain is not alone in that regard, but we do look at this, and we know the fastest growing demographic in our county is that cohort that's over the age of 65, and that's going to continue to grow as a percentage over the next 30 years. And so we look at this data. You know, we certainly look at it geographically, and as I mentioned, we know, for example, Zone 3 maybe isn't growing population-wise as fast as you all know. Much more growth occurring in areas like Zone 1 on the west or up the north, as well as down south in Zone 4. And these projections are from 24. They're probably already somewhat out of date, but incredible growth that we know we're all expecting in the coming years, and kind of trying to plan for how do we provide services.
So are you saying that you feed from Zone 1?
So as a trauma hospital, we take patients from all over Utah County, from all over central Utah down to Beaver, and from Wasatch County.
Wow.
Are we the only trauma hospital in the area?
We are the only level 2 trauma hospital in Utah County. And I'll talk a little bit about some of our vision for what the future holds with that. But again, as you know, not as much population growth in Zone 3 where there isn't as much land, it's built out, and massive growth happening on the ends and in the west in our county. So working with these consultants, we try to look at that and predict, okay, what do we think that means in the coming years? And we tend to take sort of a 5 to 10 year look at this so that we can attempt to align what our delivery model needs to look like going forward with growth. And so there's probably more data than you need to worry about looking at here, but just as an exercise, today within the county, we have roughly 210 patients every day in our hospitals. Most of those are at Utah Valley Hospital here in Provo. This is for medical, surgical, and ICU patients. So not maternity, not a NICU, not somebody that's in a rehab unit, just those types of units. And if you look at projected population change, demographic shift, and aging, that adds to that census projection going forward out 10 years, right? Disease prevalence, again, some of these are estimates and projections, and then things that would start to pull back on more people being in the hospital, things like reducing readmission, changes in insurance or care management, technology that enhances our ability. We're actually admitting people to their homes. We have a hospital at Home program today that's growing, where through technology, we send nurses and have doctors and monitoring equipment that patients can take to their home. If you have the right condition, we're not going to send somebody who's acutely ill home.
Is that a pilot kind of project, or is that?
It's hopefully not a pilot. It's been somewhat dependent on CMS's ability to continue to fund the Medicare, hospital at home reimbursement program, and so it's been funded and keeps kind of coming up at the last minute for continuing funding. But it's very much a part of our strategy is to take care of patients at home. It's much more affordable to do that. And everybody would much rather sleep in their bed than one of our hospital beds. We know that. So the moral of this slide is simply our projection, and this is a county projection, is that over the next 10 years, we're going to see at least or close to a 50% increase in the number of patients every day that are admitted to one of our hospitals. Okay, so that's increasing from 210 to a number of 312. The majority of those, because of our size and acuity and the specialists that we have, will be at Utah Valley Hospital. And so we take that kind of information, we look across the county where we have care sites, and we say, okay, what do we think that means for bed need in each of these sites, right? So you can see for Utah Valley, again, this is just the ICU and med surg going from 216 to 304. In the other hospitals that we have in the county, there's some different planned increases. This is all just sort of planning, again, subject to sort of change and whatnot.
Kevin?
We have a, yes.
Councillor Bogdan.
I'm going to ask this question because it was asked by one of our citizens yesterday, a couple of days ago. Anyway, you guys have a building up by Days Market in Provo.
Canyon Road.
Okay, what is that on here? What is that going to be?
It's probably a circle on here. I think we've got the clinics listed there. So maybe number 15 is that. So I hesitate to announce things before we've released the dollars to actually do the construction because
Oh, okay.
I've gotten in trouble doing that before. So I'll just talk in general terms. We do have plans to redevelop that site. You'll likely see something come through the city with a project for
So it'll get a fresh coat of paint.
demo, not that, demo and rebuild a new
Oh.
building.
Okay.
Okay, you're that resident?
Sorry. In fact, probably in the next couple of months, you'll likely see something coming through as we're working on design there.
I
Well-
appreciate that. And
People are gonna be excited.
Yeah, the resident will appreciate that. I'm sure he's listening.
Yeah. And part of our goal there is, we really need to ensure primary care physician access a little bit more convenient and accessible, not on a busy hospital campus. When somebody's coming for a primary care visit, if we can get those out into the community as much as possible, we want to do that. So part of the strategy for that site really is to relocate some of our existing physician clinics from the Utah Valley Hospital campus up to Canyon Road in a new building.
Counselor.
If I'm jumping ahead here, sorry.
That's okay.
I mean, clearly there's a huge increase in need for your services. What would you need from Provo City to help meet the need? Now, I don't care about your bottom line, but I'm saying
No, that's fine. It's my job.
I care about quality of life for our residents. What do you need from us to ensure that you can provide the services that our residents need, so that they don't have to travel very far and they can get the services they need in the area? They don't have to move. Is it workforce housing? Is it we need to zone for more of this or that? I mean, what is it you need from Provo? Is it roads? I mean, I know that's a topic, but I'm saying generally, are there some things that you could kind of point to and say, this is where we need help from Provo City over the next 20, 30 years to help prepare for this, or even 10 years?
Yeah. Great question. And there's probably a number of answers. Our organization is getting more active in the affordable housing space. I know there's kind of different models. We've met at times with different agencies about possible ways to do that in Provo. I think we're exploring that space much more because our workforce is, at times obviously struggling to find affordable housing. And so we have some initiatives that we're looking at on that front up in Summit County, because it's very acute up there. Nobody can afford to live.
Yeah, sure.
Nobody doing housekeeping services or a nursing aide. It's really hard to live in Park City and survive on a salary of a nursing aide. And so we're exploring in some kind of unique locations opportunities to do that. I think we've had a lot of discussion about Utah County and is there an opportunity for us to explore that further here? I think we're very interested in that with the right kind of model. Land is always a challenge. My summary slide that you'll see on here very much says, we need the city to help ensure that it's easy for patients, visitors, and employees to come to our campus in Provo.
Okay.
And hopefully, as I get through this presentation, the data and the information that I share reinforces the need there, because the growth is, pretty incredible. That's still coming for our campus.
Yeah, because I mean, if somebody is on the north part of Provo and they're like, well, I'll just go to Orem, then that's revenue, that's tax revenue we've lost, right? I assume that's a real consideration, right?
Yeah, and I think for us, there's a balance, because we don't want to force everybody into a centralized location for care. If we can provide something close to home, we have a hub and spoke model, and Intermountain is up and down the state. We want to be in communities to provide that care. That's really part of the mission.
But I'm saying if we want to drive as much of the revenue to Provo as possible, right? I mean, we want to try to make it easy for you to do business in Provo, right?
Yes. And getting to the campus, I mean, once you're on the campus, that's our problem to figure out parking and navigation, all that. But, getting to the campus is absolutely imperative. And the data I will show you is that we're going to have many more people coming to this campus in the future.
Okay.
Great questions. Okay, in addition to kind of the inpatient side, one of the biggest areas that's growing for us is actually the ambulatory side. More and more of healthcare is being done outside of a hospital. You can have your carpal tunnel surgery done in an exam room in a clinic location today, and joint replacement is being done in surgery centers and outpatient settings. And more of how healthcare is provided is moving out of a hospital into clinic locations. And so we have incredible growth that's happening in what we call our medical group, where physicians provide care in clinics. You can see some of the projections that we anticipate are pretty staggering in terms of the number of visits, and we are doing telehealth visits. That is part of our solution. So this factors in growth in areas where somebody just gets on a Zoom call with their doctor and has a visit, doesn't need to travel somewhere. We obviously want to continue to push those, but incredible growth in terms of clinic visits. You can see projected over the next 10 years over roughly 200,000 additional visits with more than 200 additional providers, doctors on this campus in Provo. And again, part of our goal is to make care accessible. So we're not just, if you need a cardiologist, we don't want everybody in Utah County to have to come to Provo to get that. That's not our goal. We're going to have cardiology access in Spanish Fork and over in Saratoga and up in the north. But just based on the changing demographic, the growing Medicare population, and the need for specialty care, specialty services, this is our projection. That's an increase of 194 exam rooms to 467. I mean, that essentially means we have to build another 250,000 square foot patient tower just for clinics on our campus. So if you know the Sorensen Tower on the north side of our clinic, it's building another one of those basically in the next 10 years. Similarly, with inpatient growth, we expect on the Utah Valley campus, growth of roughly 115 additional beds that will be needed to house that growing average daily census. So that's growing another patient tower to start to accommodate that as well. So I'm going to show you just some additional stats, and then I'll show you some campus layout here. This is our head count. So you can see the medical group bars here, the ones kind of growing the fastest. This has gone from 250 employees in our medical group to over or just about 800 in the last 5 years. It's been just incredible growth. The hospital's maybe not grown quite as fast. I think when you look at 21 compared to where we are today, it's about 70 more employees, but we expect that will continue to grow. In total, Intermountain has over 4,000 employees based in Provo. This is just at the Utah Hospital campus. So this number starts to get us close to about 3,800 just on the campus alone.
Counselor Whitlock has a question.
Yeah, just a quick clarifying question on that. I know sometimes you have rotations. Are these people who are dedicated to this campus?
This is their primary work location. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, great question. Additionally, some transfer data. So every day our hospital gets somewhere on the average of 18 patients transferred from another facility into our hospital every day. You can see how much those numbers have grown since 2021 from about 5,400 to, by 1,000 additional visits. We project that will continue to grow as the county grows, because some of the specialty services that we provide are only going to be provided at this hospital, and many of those transfers are for higher level of care needs. 90% of those visits are EMS ambulance transfers. Yes, some are life flight, and we obviously helicopters going all day long back and forth. But most are ambulance. So when you start to talk about, so this is not looking at EMS going out into the field and picking somebody up from a car accident on I-15 and coming in. That's additional traffic. This is facility to facility transfers that have
So
grown.
that's just your transfers.
Correct. How am I doing on time? I'm gonna make sure I'm
You're good.
doing okay. So this is our campus, and as we do master site planning with these groups, we look at ages of building and where do we have building plan. Obviously, a relatively new campus with some of the building that's been done in the last 10 years with new towers and new facilities, and then so we look at this, but we have a fairly narrow, somewhat dense campus for the types of services and the growth that we're looking at. That dashed white line is sort of outlining most of the footprint of our campus. There are some buildings intermixed there. There's a gas station, there's a credit union. I'm not showing those that we obviously don't own, but not showing those on this. But if you look at kind of our campus, where we have the opportunity to grow, there isn't a ton of room to work with. We've got some area here on the north. We have this parcel that's along 800, that's between Freedom and 300 there, that we have been purchasing some of the kind of aging buildings and things along Freedom that we've been tearing down. That's in preparation for, if I go to the next slide, we have some plans. So along kind of my prior comment, I'm not announcing anything yet, but we have some plans to develop that parcel with new space, and expect that there will be some new services provided on that parcel in the not too distant future. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be elusive, but until the company releases the funds to actually build something, it's not technically approved. So, but as we work with our planners, we look at things like where would you potentially put a new parking garage and where would you put a new tower? And so we try to look at planning for our campus and the growth, but it is a dense campus, and in order to grow, we're going to have to continue to go vertical. I don't know that if we build another parking garage, that's where it will go. This is just sort of for illustrative purposes, but needing new ambulatory buildings and new inpatient buildings gives you a sense of kind of how we look at how we might do that going forward. So maybe if I'm giving you the kind of big picture vision for the hospital, the things that we are really focused on the most today, in a few years, you could probably put university hospital in our title, because we are very much moving towards a teaching, what I call a quasi-academic medical center. So our partnership with the New School of Medicine at BYU is going to trigger a number of things where we have plans to stand up a number of new training programs at our hospital for two reasons. One is to help train new medical students. Having residency programs is actually one of the most cost-effective ways to train medical students. Taking a busy doctor who's trying to see patients and giving them 3 medical students to try and teach while they're trying to get through their busy day that's a hard thing. But having a teaching model like most universities have, where residents are involved in teaching medical students, and then the residents are being taught more by faculty and the attending providers, that's a model we're trying to mimic. So we have plans to stand up a number of residency programs. You can see in phase 1, these 2 are the ones that we're kicking off initially: internal medicine and psychiatry. The benefit of residency program, besides training medical students, is the statistics say roughly 50% of residents stay in the state where they train. So our goal here is to train not only med students, but med students don't always stick around. They often are going to different programs, all over the country. But with residents, we have a much better sticking opportunity to have them fill our needs here locally in the city, in the county, and in the state. And so we are working on examining a number of residency programs where we would really have an identity as a teaching hospital, which is a huge evolution from what we've been over the years. So that's a big part of what we're exploring there. There's kind of a phase 2 based on if BYU's medical school expands beyond 60 students, which we expect it will, where we think we need some additional programs. These are specialty programs called fellowships, where we think there's opportunities to train in some of these specialty areas as well. And so that's a big part of what we're doing. Another big part of what we're doing is becoming a level 1 trauma hospital. So our goal in the next couple of years is to achieve this designation. There's only 2 facilities in the state that have this: University of Utah Medical Center and Intermountain Medical Center in Murray. That's it for the state of Utah. Primary Children's is a pediatric level 1 trauma for the state, but as far as adult hospitals go, we're already acting very much like a level 1 trauma hospital today. There isn't much that comes to us that we send out. So, the Highway 6 disasters and the ATV and the recreating accidents. And interestingly enough, our largest volume of trauma is ground level falls. So grandma or mom and dad trip at home and break a hip, that counts as a trauma and activates our trauma team. So those numbers are growing, and our intent is to become a level 1 facility to kind of match this identity as a teaching quaternary type hospital going forward. And then I've mentioned some of this already, but just the growth within our medical group to support that subspecialization of services, having specialized cancer surgeons and specialized within certain specialties, sort of subspecialization. That's a big part of kind of what the future is for us as well. So
before we leave that,
yeah.
So you talk about partnering with BYU. Do you partner with NORDA or Rocky Mountain?
We do. Yeah, we do. Rocky Mountain, I think, well, we do partner with Rocky Mountain in terms of some of their, programs and students, but from a medical school standpoint, we do have a partnership with NORDA. So their medical students already are in our facility. And so some of this actually will help us solve how we do training for all medical students, whether they're BYU or NORDA type thing. And so, yeah, great question.
So make sure I'm understanding correctly. Right now, because you're not a teaching hospital, you don't actually have residents on staff.
We have one residency program today. It's family medicine. So we've been, that's a program in place for more than 20 years.
20 years. Long program.
Yeah. Just started. More than 20 years. And actually, many of the physicians that work in the county and even in rural central parts of the state went through our program at Utah Valley Hospital for family medicine. So that's the only one we have.
But you'll be expanding that to multiple residence programs.
Multiple programs, correct, in addition. And
do you know rough numbers on what that would be?
He just showed them all.
Yeah, I mean, the programs themselves we're looking at these ones, but I'll give you an
Sorry, I was saying like rough number of residents.
Yeah. So for internal medicine, it's a 3-year residency program. We're looking at 15 residents per class, so it'll be a total of 45 new residents training at our hospital in that specialty. For psychiatry, it'll be 4 per class, and that's a 4-year residency, so a total of 16 for the program in total.
So quite a lot of residents.
Yeah.
Well, I'm thrilled you're focusing on psychiatry. That's such a
we have
such an underfunded one. Gary Garrett has a question online. Gary?
Great.
Yes. Can you go back to your last map image, the one that says long-term 0 to 10 years? That one shows along 500 North on the corner there, and 500 West and 800 North. The charcoal property, which includes Chevron and the other private practices. I assume that's charcoal because that property is in private hands.
Yeah, it's probably charcoal because our consultant made a mistake when they drew this map and failed to remember that there's property there we don't own. So we don't have plans. We actually have a building in that charcoal area for our family medicine residency that got wiped out in this, and I wasn't able to get an updated map in time. So yes.
I just made an assumption there, and then farther north, or rather east on 800 North, the other charcoal piece adjacent to the west of the prospective building is also charcoal. My real question is that property not owned by IHC?
It is, and I think that's meant to depict like additional surface parking opportunity. Again, I think the consultant made some mistakes in their map drawing here. We will have additional parking around any building that we build on that parcel, but we do not own the credit union, and so we are planning for what we're doing there as if the credit union stays, and that may change, who knows, over time, but not something that we are in charge of, obviously. So sorry for that misdirection there.
I know the city wants to get rid of the credit union too.
Okay.
You both have a mutual.
So yeah, just in summary, I think covered much of this. I mean, we are very interested in an 800 North expansion. In fact, when we rebuilt the hospital, the front door for our hospital faces south to 800 North intentionally because this was in the RTP. This was part of the plan. We were expecting that to kind of continue to grow as maybe a major corridor. But, you know, obviously we're very interested in an interchange connecting the freeway and having a direct shot, just because the number of patients coming to our campus, you know, by ambulance and transport is going up. And if you can have a direct line for how they get to us, that's just better. And so we're very interested, very supportive of that. Happy to, you know, to be vocal about that. Our campus is going to continue to be an increasingly active and vibrant campus with greater density. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we just need your continued support. You know, as we grow, how do we accommodate the growth of people getting to our campus?
Well, I know one of as we talked about, you're the second highest employer in our city, and we're working on our economic development plan. And we assume, I mean, who knows what'll happen, but it's very likely, I think it'll come back to something medical that we should focus on, bio industry, something. But, you know, we've talked about even having like a committee or something of, you know, the top economic people, you know, the hospital, BYU, NORDA, like having these groups together that we can help do the things we need to do in the city to make it better for you, to make it better for our customers. I mean, our citizens and the customers of the businesses that you bring so much to the city. And so I assume that we will work a lot together in the future. And we're grateful for that you guys are here and that you take good care of your property and that you're a wonderful asset to the city.
Wonderful. Thank you. We're excited to continue to be involved in conversations on
Any
that.
questions for Kyle?
No, thank you, Kyle.
Great. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
What'd you say? You were there.
At one of their facilities.
There you go. Sorry.
We're glad that we have this resource.
All right, we're going to take a break. Yep.
Recording in progress.
All right, next we have a resolution amending the HOME-ARP allocation plan. This will be presented by Melissa McNally, our community grants administrator.
No, Melissa.
Good afternoon. So for those of you who are new and aren't aware, our HOME-ARP funding was a one-time funding from HUD to help with individuals dealing with homelessness or at risk of homelessness. And this is just an amendment to the plan because one of our recipients of this funding would like to change the use of some of the funding. So they want to move $260,000 from tenant-based rental assistance into supportive services because there's a little more leeway in the things that they can use it for in supportive services. So it's not increasing their funding at all. It's just moving the funding kind of from one bucket to another one. And because it's because of the amount, we have to do a substantial amendment and have a public comment period, and then we'll have a hearing on this in August. So do you have any questions on any of that?
About the description, Melissa, I just wondered if this was like administrative services for them to manage the program. Like, are they just using it for staff and wages? Or is it for actual?
No, this is for homeless. So it's for community action.
Mhm.
Some of the supportive services does reimburse them for salaries for the individuals that are dealing directly with that population. But one of the biggest things that they cited was for eviction prevention. So a lot of the bulk of the funding will be going to help people stay in their housing. And then some of it will go for staff salaries.
But that's like a
overhead.
percentage, right? Isn't it like 10% or something?
No, that part, the administrative
Is for us?
is for us.
Okay.
Yes. So we reduced that down to, because council had some concerns about how big that was.
Yeah.
We reduced it to 5% and
Okay.
released the other two for more homeless
Okay.
services. So
Okay, great.
that's where we're at.
Any other questions for Melissa? All right, we'll see you tonight. Or is this,
In
does
August.
it have to? Okay.
Yeah, this is just hey, this is coming up.
We're
Sure.
always invited.
Sure. Thank you. Okay.
Thanks.
All right. Next, a resolution approving an interlocal agreement between Provo City and Orem City regarding funding for Orem 2000 South Storm Drain Project and authorizing the mayor to sign that agreement on behalf of the city, presented by Daniel Nixon, Public Works Engineer. I don't think you've ever presented to us before.
She has.
Oh, have you? I'm sorry, Danielle.
No, just fine.
I'm just
No
excited to
worries.
see you. Anyway.
So it's kind of funny because I have
Now that I
presented.
see you, I do know I've seen.
I presented on the other section of 2000 North interlocal agreement. So
Oh,
this
okay.
is going on to the east side of Geneva Road. So previously when I came, I talked about the storm drain that I installed as part of my project between Lakeview Parkway and Geneva Road. This is now on the other side of Geneva. So to reiterate, we do have an existing agreement for 2000 North. Provo City owns 2000 North up to the north curb. And then it's Orem City after that. So they own the planter strip and the sidewalk. So any utility work that they do within the road does need to have Provo City review it and approve it. But we have this agreement in place stating that they can put in utilities within that road that they may need.
Okay, I had a question for you. Provo and Orem don't share any utilities, right? We don't share pipes, right?
So when it comes to water, they have their water system, we have
Yeah,
our water
yeah.
system, same with sewer.
Right.
And
There's some electrical stuff probably.
they have Rocky Mountain Power and we have our
Okay, so it's
Provo
all
City
separate.
Power.
So they're just using our space to go in and access their stuff that's not our stuff.
So to clarify on this one specifically, because we don't have a storm drain main in 2000 North, nor do we, well, we were planning on putting one in, but they needed a large facility to be put into this road. And they, with working with our staff, we agreed that if they would accept our roadway drainage into their system, we would not put in our system, and then they could put in a bigger facility and have more room for their storm drain main. So in this case, it is a shared facility in some regard. So Provo City takes care of the inlets and the laterals connecting to the main, but then Orem City takes care of all of the main storm drain.
And they're getting that water.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
So like I was saying before, this is on the east side of Geneva Road. So where I have it kind of highlighted in red is the location of the project that Orem City is proposing. Well, they already have it put out to, already awarded to RB Construction. So they'll connect on to where I ended, just past Geneva Road, right by the Holiday gas station. And then they'll continue up and stop right prior to the UTA tracks. So they won't have to cross those, thankfully. So we have a proposed agreement between Orem and Provo currently, stating that Orem will be paying for the design and putting out to bid the contract for installing this storm drain. And then Provo City's cost associated with this is there's a, and I'll get to that later, but there's a connection into an existing system that we have that we would like them to make, and some inlets that will be placed further up. One of the big caveats though that I wanted to make sure you guys were aware of is in this agreement, we did put in a limited discharge section. The reason being is that currently there is no Orem City outfall because they have not completed their Lakeview Parkway roadway. They have to overflow into Provo City's connection or system in Lakeview Parkway. And if they were to connect like a whole subdivision or two onto the system, our system wouldn't be able to handle it. We don't have the capacity to have their communities added onto our system. So this limited discharge is essentially stating that the only discharge going into the system is from our street drainage, because that is going eventually to Provo City stormwater right now. And once they have an outfall placed with their Lakeview Parkway extension, then they can hook on whatever they want, because it will then be disconnected from the Provo system. So these are just some of the exhibits within the agreement showing the project plans, just where it starts and ends. And then the highlighted in yellow section right here. Oh, sorry. I forget that you can draw.
Draw it, no worries.
This part. So we have an existing sump in the road on 2000. We would like them to make the connection so that instead of potentially overflowing in a big rain event, having to go around the corner, it can just connect into the storm drain system and flow out. So that's the main cost that Provo City is going to be paying for. We also do take, we did some math and we take percentage of other costs associated, which I'll show you.
The whole cost is 16?
Yeah. Yep. That's the cost that Provo City will pay. The total contract cost is 900, just over 900,000. So the materials to do that connection and the replacement of the asphalt and everything is about $14,000. And then this $2,500 is takes a percentage of, so we take the cost of $14,000 and see how much that is of the overall contract. And then on certain items like SWIP and mobilization and traffic control, we pay a cost, part of that cost, because they'll have to use that, to do our section. So the total cost for us comes out to $16,520.49. So not a crazy expense for us in the long run.
No.
All right.
Oh, there was one, I don't know if I had that. No. This is a part of what Provo City's paying, but there is also an inlet here and another one on that side. There's two inlets that are being placed that Provo City will take over ownership of once they're installed, but we are not paying the cost of them. The reason being is that there's a development, and why this is all going in is there's a development on Orem side of the road that they have to collect our street drainage at some point. It's part of our city code. And so Orem has an agreement with the developer to get these installed. And since that would normally be a cost of the developer, we are not having to pay for them. So, any questions? Yes.
Is it fair to say this is a good deal for us?
Yes.
That's what it sounds like.
Councillor Bogdan.
Danielle, do we know how close Orem is to getting their portion of the Lakeview Parkway finished?
I don't know, unfortunately. I'm hoping, I have heard rumors, so that things are.
What do rumors say?
That maybe the new mayor might be helping get things moving, but again, all rumor, all speculation, I don't know.
When I talked to Karen, she said that's probably a good thing to put on our joint meeting.
That is a good thing to put on.
Yeah, that is.
Thanks.
Yeah, getting that finished.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, next we have an ordinance vacating a section of 1600 West to deed back to the adjoining property owners. This is presented by Megan Jensen, city planner.
Hey, thank you. This one is pretty simple. On 1600 West, there was a subdivision, and the city had a certain portion of the right-of-way dedicated to us to do street improvements. Those improvements have been done. That's fine. And there's about a 20-foot width that's left over, and so this is just to deed that property back to the adjoining landowners.
They originally gave it to you, right?
Yeah. And that's all.
As it should be. Any questions on this?
I was a little
Councilor
confused
Whipple?
on this one. So you just said they gave it?
It's their land originally.
It was their land originally. So when we got that from them, did we purchase it from them? Did we?
You just have to give it.
For their subdivision, we required it. Dedication.
Okay, we required as the dedication for the subdivision. And we've been able to do our work, had our elbow room. We're done with it now. Okay. I know that we're not supposed to give away land without compensation, and I wanted to make sure that wasn't an issue
No,
here.
because they gave it for free.
That's what I thought, so.
Yeah, and on top of that, it's actually what the state statute requires for vacations. So once we dedicated property, once we decide we're not using it and we vacate it, it's what the state statute requires.
Yeah, I just think it's useful to make it clear that it's okay for us to give this land back.
Counselor Bogdan.
So with 1600 West, especially down this portion, it is super narrow, super, super narrow. We are confident that we're gonna be wide enough.
So
Because this portion right here is across from existing houses. It's not that upper portion that we had widened.
So this road has been on the plan to widen for decades. And the problem we have is you notice the next house, and you can't see all the houses on there. It never gets widened. The sidewalk never got done because we kept saying, we're going to build back to this line of dedication, but we would have had to buy like 8 houses to do that. We determined that that's never going to happen. So we would never build sidewalk along the street. So it's better just to get the sidewalk in now, even though rather than try to wait till we buy these houses, otherwise we'd be decades before they would get sidewalk. It's better to get that in there now because we have so much growth. There's schools there. We just need to get the sidewalks in. And if we try to hold back for a big roadway section, we would do what we did in the past and just never do it. And so it just makes sense to get in there, get it done. So holding out this person's right of way after they dedicate it to us, we're just never going to use it. It's just, it was a good idea, but it's not really practical or feasible to think we'd ever build that road that way, just because of the house takings we'd have to do on both sides of the road.
That doesn't solve the problem that road is so narrow. That road is a problem.
Is there parking allowed on it?
No. I don't think there's
Is this
no
a-
parking signs per se, but if people park on it, they're told by the cops you can only get 1 car down it. It's that narrow. It's an alleyway. It is not a street.
So it's one of the other streets that needs signs.
It's just a street that needs to be widened and dealt with. And that's my concern
Is
right
this
there.
a main street? I'm not familiar with it.
1600 West is scheduled to go in through all the way to the Parkway. And this goes from Sunset View Elementary south, and it dead ends
I know
right
what it
now
is.
into farm fields, and it will go through all the way to the Parkway. It's one of the 1100, 1600, 2050. It goes down to the ballpark, so you get a lot of traffic when ball season's in. I get complaints all the time that we never should have allowed that development to go through because we just don't have the sidewalk for the kids to walk to school. We just don't have the width of that road. And so that's my concern is we're giving this up. And I realize we have to bite, but this is going to be a major corridor. It's going from Center Street all the way to the Parkway.
The sense is if we're going to end up doing that and buying all these homes, if we have to buy that right away, that would be the least of our expenses. The power corridor, all the utilities, the expense of this project to make it a bigger width than this is so enormous that I don't see it happening in several generations. And so we would go generations without this, even if this connects down to the Lakeview, it will, the funding costs, projecting out funding, this will never get done. And it will stay with no sidewalks on a narrow road for generations because we're waiting for funding to buy all those homes, relocate all the power corridor, relocate all the irrigation, all the other things that are out there. And I think we've seen that in the last 30 years. This needs to be done, but there's not going to be a time that we'll come to this group and say, we got to buy 9 homes at $500,000 or $1 million a pop, buy all this property. I would envision this group looking at us and saying, that's just not ever going to be a $10 million priority to build this road.
Is it narrow for blocks and blocks, or is it just narrow for like 8 homes?
It's narrow for several blocks, but once you get into the open field, we'll widen it out.
So with the new stuff, you will make it appropriately.
We looked at the traffic, it will function, it's not ideal. It's going to be challenging, but we'll have other collector grid in this section. So this piece of right of way, whether we own it or don't own it, isn't going to dictate whether we ever do this widening or not. It's going to be, if this body wants to dedicate millions and millions of dollars to buy homes and not even build the road yet, just to buy the homes, then
This road not being wide doesn't mean you can't widen the new roads that will come in.
no, we would widen for as we go further in.
The problem is it ends at Sunset Elementary, so it is one of the two major roads you use going from the south to get up to the school. And it's, as much as it has no sidewalk on it, you've got that new subdivision that has lots of kids, and so you do have a lot of pedestrian traffic. that
We just
does-
want to get them off the road into on the sidewalks is the goal we have there. Anyway, that's where I think just projecting out, seeing the future, that's what I would envision. So certainly this body can look at something different, but I don't envision us owning that. We have a no man's land. It'd be nice just to have landscape take care of it. I just don't see a scenario where the city is going to take those homes through there for generations. That's the concern we have. And yet we're gonna have kids walking there for generations.
And where is the sidewalk being placed? Is that on the piece that's still?
Yeah, that
The city would own the sidewalk.
That's where it says area to remain dedicated.
The sidewalk on the other side is actually more useful than the sidewalk here. Because these are farmhouses, right? I mean, you can see how deep these lots are. I mean, Jeff and Lori live on this street, right? They live on this side of the street. This other side of the street is more, they built the Hillshaw Lane, so Hillshaw hates that one, call it Hillshaw Lane, but they built that there, and so most of that farmland is taken. And the junior high's over there too, guys. I mean, you're looking at maybe 2 houses north is the elementary school, and then you're looking at maybe 3 blocks east is the junior high school. So this is a very traveled road. It is a very narrow road. And the inlet at 890 goes all the way through over to 1100, right past that junior high. It's a highly traveled road. It does need sidewalks all the way down. So the sidewalk goes, 2 houses, and then it stops. And then it goes down to 890. I mean, you're looking from 6 South to 890. You're looking at 3 blocks. And this is closer to 6 than it is to 890. So I agree the sidewalk needs to be there. And this is behind the sidewalk. It's not in front of the sidewalk, right?
Yeah, this section's fine.
Why did we have the sidewalk come out so far? Why didn't we have it pushed back?
So if you look, what we intend to do is if we have the road weaving in and out, makes an unsafe condition. We want it to just have a straight shot, because if you look at all the other property owners, they would own way out. So if we're putting this sidewalk in, if we had built it into this section and then build it out, and then build it in and build it out, the drainage would be virtually impossible to manage. It would be awful it'd be unsafe condition for the traffic. It would just create a hazard. It would be a hazard for the kids that walk out into the sidewalk, out into the street. There's not a good reason to build it that way. So we need to build a straight shot. And I just believe the financial constraints are not going to let us build a road we'd really like to build. And so I think that's where we are with that. I don't know if that answered your question.
No, it did. I appreciate that. But I also think it's good to get out there into the public, because this street is a problem.
It is, but we have so many kids walking down that street. And
We do.
And if we just keep the lane and not doing the sidewalk, I felt it's like we just said we're gonna jump on this. This just needs to get done. So we're gonna finish that sidewalk.
We need to get the no parking signs up on that road too.
Yeah, we can do that too.
Counselor Whitlock.
I have 2 questions. One, just to summarize the conversation, to make sure I'm understanding it well. Essentially, we're saying there's a lot of kids on the street. We want to build a sidewalk. Because we're building the sidewalk, we know we won't need that piece of land because we're putting the sidewalk to the right of it. And that's why we're doing it. That's like the trigger. Is that correct?
Yes.
Amazing. So we're prioritizing kids' safety ahead of time proactively. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Cool. I have just a small question. What is the actual size of that parcel? Because there's sort of different reports of it in different documents. One of them says it's 0.13 acres, and the other one says it's 0.085 acres. So I'm just curious if you know the actual size.
The size of
The red part.
the
Yeah, I
red
thought
part
we're-
is 0.08 is what it says in the legal description here.
Sorry, it's small. Okay, there we go. So
I
then,
knew it, but they told me one time, I never really.
Okay,
That's
no, it's fine.
why I was,
Okay, but
I need somebody to tell me.
makes sense.
What is the width of that road?
Now that we're talking about city streets.
Vern's supposed to be here on vacation, we don't let that. No, we're not glad, no, we should clap. It's not a positive.
Don't reward that behavior.
No, we are not going to reward that, I won't tell anybody. Say otherwise, no. So we've gone back and forth for this, before we did the sidewalk project, we had been arguing for probably 2 years, Vern and I, back and forth. We got to consensus that we had to get. This was the only way to get the sidewalk done, and is just to do this, and he's concurrent with me, he agrees, we just had to find a way to solve this, so.
We don't remember the width.
Yeah, we do know the width, but I have to go look it
Yeah,
up,
yeah, yeah.
I don't know it.
Well, we're glad Vern agrees.
Is it smaller than 24 feet?
Uh,
I'm looking at it right now.
I'd
I
have,
would dare
I
say.
don't-
it is.
know what it is.
Don't measure the wider part with the new subdivision measure.
I think it's bigger, I think it's a 60-foot asphalt or 30-foot asphalt section, but I'd have to,
I would guess more 30, I don't think it's 60.
I'd have to.
Right of way, 6 or good asphalt.
Yeah. Let me check. We're limited, let me find out, we can. get back to you.
All right, thank you. All right, next we have an ordinance requiring members of the boards and commissions to be Provo residents. This is presented by our policy analyst, Tanner Takuchi.
All right. Thank you. Today, first item I'll be presenting regards our boards and commissions. This topic came up because we're in the confirmation season, the consenting season for board appointees. So essentially what this does is it changes what I call the default setting for residency requirements. Currently in code, the default is that anyone can serve on a Provo board or commission regardless of their residency status, being a Provo resident, unless the code in that specific board or commission section of statute says otherwise. Those boards, as I understand it, are listed right here with their actual requirements. So what the policy proposal that I'm going to explain today would essentially add a residency requirement to the general section of the boards and commissions chapter of code and allow exceptions to be made in the individual sections for the specific boards and commissions. So you can see the language here. That is what is the function, like the main functional part of the proposal. And then the other exhibits that are included in your packet allow the Arts Council to maintain 3 non-residents because of the impact the Arts Council has on the broader Utah County community. That was requested by the sponsor, Councilor Bogdan. And then as Brian and I talked about it, we suggested adding exceptions there in the airport board and on the Board of Equalization, which is made exclusively of city employees.
What's FPO?
Yeah. Flight-based operator.
It's the person who runs the
Yeah.
gas and stuff.
Oh, yeah, okay, got it.
That representative is required to be a member of the board. They're representing the business side rather than the citizen side, and there's no guarantee that whoever that person is.
That makes sense. Correct. And this was a change made when about the time we published. So the language of candidates here would allow any incumbent non-residents to continue. I understand that there's at least one that was just appointed to the Landmark Commission. So that individual would be able to carry out the term that they've been approved to start.
All right, any questions for, okay. Go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry, I'll make this quick. I just want to point out, like, there's a consideration to be made about some committees having very specific requirements. You'll see some of these listed here require additional training or experience. So essentially, one of the impacts of this could be shrinking the total talent pool. For example, not all BYU history professors live in the city. So you would, if the council is comfortable with the pool of professors or anyone else with history experience or transportation, academia experience living in the city, then that really is a non-issue at that point. I don't have any numbers to back that up right now, but I don't know how many history professors live here in the city. That's what I mean. You can see of the boards and commissions that we have, we're on the lower end. Most cities require more of their boards to have some form of residency than us.
So we're the largest city out of those.
That's correct. And this is just a summary of
There's more people to choose.
how
Yeah.
the boards will be composed if this proposal is adopted. And that's the end of it.
Thanks, Tanner. Any questions for Tanner?
Yes.
Just the Arts Council, you mentioned the broader impact it has on the broader community.
Correct.
I guess I need a little more, I mean, why does the Arts Council need to have people from outside Provo? I don't know. I just need to understand a little more.
That just came to us a couple of years ago. Yeah, go for it.
When the Cubby Center was constructed, that was a change. I think that came around that time because of the regional nature of the Cubby Center and the assumption that the Arts Council would be part of, with that facility. So it was looked at as a regional facility and is being utilized as such. So that was the logic behind it back
So you
then.
think it's still justified?
I think it is, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Question.
Yes.
Gary?
Yes, Tanner, can you clarify for me how this relates to the power board? Is the power board technically not a Provo board since it's UMPA?
It is. And it is outlined in the power section of code.
And they're all residents, right?
Yes,
Oh, they are all residents.
Currently there.
I believe they are.
Currently they are.
So is it not required, but this would make it required that they all are.
Yes, that is correct.
And I think that makes sense because UMPA's only 6 cities. Why would we want somebody from Orem sitting on our
100%.
energy board? And we have to have an energy board from what I understand because we're so large, right? So it doesn't make sense to farm that out. If we're supposed to have it, let's keep it.
Right, but what about, so what am I missing here? Because it includes Nephi and so would,
No.
Well,
That's
yeah,
not the Oompa board. That's a whole different board.
yeah, Gary, I
Oh.
think you're conflating the board of directors of UMPA
Yes.
with the
Yeah.
Provo City Energy Board that just advises the Provo City Energy Department.
Yes.
oh, okay, sorry, thank you.
Thank you for the
Gary, I've heard that Spanish Fork is getting close to where they would be required to have an energy board as well. So I think it's within UMPA's bylaws or something that triggers an energy board.
All right. Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, Madam Director.
I thought, Bill, correct me if I'm wrong, I thought we got rid of the design review committee. Is that still in code?
We'll be getting rid of it, formalizing that with the new code.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you.
Scott Henderson?
Maybe helping you with the definition of residency. I know there are board members that own a business here in town or own land or own property. Are those included as residents? Are we going to have to establish whether or not they reside in the community or are they landowners?
That's a good point.
So as far as the legal definition, I mean, when I've worked on other issues in the past, if there's no definition in code, then it reverts to the most common understanding of what a resident would be, which would be their primary residences here in the city. Like they spend 51% of their residential time in the city. But Brian, feel free to jump in and correct me on that.
No, I think that's right as far as what the definition means. And I guess to the policy question, could you go back to the slide that lists the boards? I think, I was gonna say, I think the policy question is a valid one, and it just becomes are there any of these that you think that someone who owns property should be allowed rather than someone who lives here? Because, just because somebody, I don't know, owns a business doesn't necessarily make them a prime candidate for the library board, but it might make them a prime candidate for the energy board. maybe, right? I mean, because that has an impact on business. So
I know my goal is residents as far as they live here.
Yeah.
Their quality of life, their day-to-day, they're invested.
And I would say also to Brian's comment, there's a Venn diagram, people who own businesses in Provo, people who live in Provo, and there's an overlap there. You would be now then focusing on, you could consider if there was a need for someone who owned a business. It's just a smaller pool, but it is an existing pool of residents who own businesses. So
Gary, do you have a question? Does Gary have his hand up? Okay.
It was the earlier question, but since you asked, yes, I will inquire. I will inquire about DPI. To Scott's earlier point about about business owners, could they be in business
DPI
owners
is
be
a far
included
lower-
on? Okay,
DPI
okay,
is
that's
a
a
far
separate.
lower- Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
I have a question. Have we had, because Tanner, you mentioned like a conceptual on your other slide where you said residency requirements may limit talent pools.
yeah, sure.
Have we had a difficult time filling boards historically?
Not that I'm aware, Scott, I don't know, you would probably have more experience historically, and I haven't asked that question of you.
It seems to be a constant call, and especially around July 1st, there is quite a turnover. But I think we've been able to reach quorums and fill our boards along the way with a little bit of cooperative effort.
while this slide is up, just going back to Scott's earlier comment, you notice that particularly in TMAC, one of the members on TMAC is supposed to specifically be somebody who represents a business. So that may be one of the questions with that. One of the areas where Scott's question particularly applies is, do you want that to have to be a business representative who also lives here? Or could it just?
We
be
have
the
that
owner of
now.
the
So
business?
right now it's the Vesper owner who lives here and owns the scooter store. So I think we could do both. I double checked on TMAC and Vern felt comfortable with the change. Thought it was good.
You can try it, see how it goes.
I mean, yeah, if we run into a problem, we know.
Expand.
All right.
Yeah, the way that it's, for example, the way that it's written, it says except as provided with a specific board. So you could always add language to the TMAC one later saying that one doesn't have to be a resident.
needed to,
and it would
yeah.
Trump the one the change that you're making.
Sure.
So.
All right, well, we'll hear this is in the night meeting.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
can bring
great.
it back to a night meeting.
Yep.
The next night meeting.
But I can also say that even though we have BYU, we're still a pretty large city, right? And we are still the hub. And I think we have a college town. So we have professors living here, we have business owners living here, we have residents living here. I think we should be able to fill those.
Okay.
Awesome, thank you. Oh, you're the next one
Yep,
too.
I'm
All
gonna
right, I'm
be
gonna
here
read
for
it
a
really quick, Tanner. A discussion regarding a proposed text amendment to allow tow truck parking in residential zones. And I'm not gonna read the part that.
Nope. Yeah, thank you for not reading. So yeah, this is an issue item that was sponsored by Councilor McKay and Councilor Bogdan. And just to clarify, this item only pertains to storage and parking of a tow truck on a residential parcel, not streets in a residential zone. So I just want to make that clear up front. That's my responsibility for any confusion on that. So this is a balancing act of public safety and the needs of the police department compared to like local neighborhood issues and trying to balance those important needs. First, just a little bit of context. I'm going to talk about how tow trucks operate in Provo. I'm going to get to the proposal and describing what the proposal exactly entails towards the end. But in Provo, we have several tow truck businesses that operate here. And not all of them are people who operate tow truck businesses, speaking to that question from earlier, actually live here in Provo. So they might operate from yards here, but in addition to providing services to citizens or residents who need towing services because they have a flat tire or something like that, they also respond to public needs from law enforcement agencies, including the Provo Police Department. And so that can be for any number of issues, some of which are listed here. And so the police department rather frequently calls on tow trucks in the area through what's called a rotation list, where all of the tow truck businesses are listed out, and then they go in order calling on their services when they're required. those tow truck companies that are on the rotation list and who are on the rotation list for other law enforcement agencies in the county that will operate in the county have contractual time limits that they have to respond to those calls. So you'll see it can be longer for some of these other agencies. Ours is 15 minutes. I will say, though, that that's actually, to my knowledge, not written anywhere yet. The police department is working on a written agreement that will codify that, likely to 15 minutes, when they adopt their new software to help operate the tow list. But I spoke to everyone on the tow list, the operators, that is to say, and then the police department, and everyone across the board, without fail, said the expectation is 15 minutes. So that is what they're functionally operating on right now. So they have to respond in 15 minutes to any call that they receive any time of day, 24/7. That's what we're expecting of the tow truck companies. So I'll go over these. Again, it's not covering this. Sorry, it's not covering this. This has nothing to do with this. But so this will stay in code. However, this is a piece of code that's currently in our zone ordinance, zoning code, that would prohibit most tow trucks from being stored on a residential lot. So essentially, they cannot park their tow truck that they operate at their house, is what that law is saying. And so this has created some conflicts for residents where they're being cited by code enforcement for having their tow truck at their house, even though we're requiring a 15-minute response to police calls even at nighttime.
Wait, can you go back one, Tanner?
There you go.
Shall be allowed to be parked on any public street or more. No tow truck. Okay, so that's no parking.
That's correct.
I thought they were conflicting, like you said, but they're the same. Okay.
Yes. So just to give a quick background also on if this has been a problem, if this happens frequently, this is how many heavy trucks or heavy commercial vehicles are cited by code enforcement annually for parking on the street illegally in violation of that first code. This is how many heavy commercial vehicles in general are being cited for being parked on a parcel illegally, whether that's a food truck or a heavy earth moving equipment or something like that. And then tow trucks, actually, there's only been about 5 cases over the past 5 years that a tow truck has actually been in violation. That's just for you general context. This doesn't happen a lot, but it could happen. It's happened to some residents who have brought this to the council's attention recently. So as far as the actual need or the effect of this and potentially prohibiting or making it difficult for operators to park at their house, this is a frequent occurrence. It's not probably a small portion of their actual business being called on to tow for Provo once a week, but they could be towing for other cities, and it really just would strain their ability to respond to, like is listed here, 1,800 requests a year for towing services.
Councillor Bogdan has a question.
So Tanner, let's say we keep this and they can't respond in 15 minutes because they're not dynamic and they can just drive to their yard and grab it and go.
Mm-hmm.
What would this cut from 35 down to what? We know?
So I talked to Lieutenant Larson. He didn't give me an exact number. There are some people on the rotation right now who routinely miss the cutoff, and that's really the biggest impact on the operators, is the fact that if they can't come in time, then the responding officer will just skip them and they lose out on the calls. That's probably the biggest impact to the operator. Lieutenant Larson expects that some will drop off, but I don't think he was able to quantify exactly how many will drop off the list because they're just kind of permanently unable to respond.
And so we don't know how many would put us in like crisis mode. I mean, because we're using them one per week at 35.
I get what you're looking. So I think 35 companies responding. I don't think a reduction in that number will lead to a crisis. I think it will just lead to more calls for the people who remain on the rotation list.
But let's say that Robin, his company, are they the only ones in town that can actually park at a tow yard and respond? I mean, we having others that just aren't, that are hiding their truck well, that aren't getting hit. I mean,
I understand what you mean.
If we keep this in line and keep enforcing on this, Are we gonna just be down to dynamic?
I understand what you're saying. Yes.
Well, given, I mean, you would think not, given that it's already currently illegal and we've only been citing once a year.
Yeah.
Okay. So they're
So,
not doing well at hiding their trucks, they're just not parking them here.
yeah, no, we're not finding it. We're not complaining about it, or they don't live necessarily in the city. But there's operators who do live in the city who could live in the city in the future would be impacted by it. You're right that there are some operators, the vast minority though, out of my interviews that I've had with the towing companies, only 3 or 4, 3 of which are the people you're referring to, live within, walking distance or close enough that it wouldn't really be an additional tax on their time.
Councilor Hoban.
So we're gonna open this up to all trailers and such.
No,
No,
so yeah,
just tow truck.
You're just
No,
gonna
I'm-
put in there exceptions for tow trucks.
yep. So I'll skip right to that. So this does 2 things. The primary action that you'll be taking if you adopt this is to basically say the code as it is stands, except tow trucks. So we were going to continue to prohibit heavy commercial vehicles on residential parcels above a certain weight rating, except if you're a tow truck. That's the only.
And it's actually even more restricted than
Yeah,
that,
it is.
unless you're a tow truck that has a contract with us to be on
Yeah.
the rotation list.
Is it with us or with any government?
With
Any
within-
government entity. And I spoke with the code enforcement about that, and they say, and Sandy can speak to this, they would prefer to keep it as any government entity. And it's easy enough to verify that because of the way that the trucks have to be marked, and you can easily verify if they're on another government agency's list.
I mean, obviously this isn't happening a lot, but who would technically be responsible to enforce this? Is it Sandy's group or is it?
That's
code
correct.
enforcement?
It would be code enforcement.
She's
in the
over
zoning
just
code.
saying.
Oh, you do both now?
I'm both now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I got it. Yeah, okay. So it's not, what I was asking actually, is it parking or is it zoning enforcement?
It would be code enforcement because it's.
Okay, it's code enforcement. It's not a parking, okay.
Councilor Christensen.
I'm sorry, I'm not tracking.
Okay.
This is such a minuscule impact. Am I missing something?
No,
I was asking.
No, so I'm just thinking about all the time that's been spent to get to this point that you've spent. I must be missing a slide. I'm
did skip
not
a
saying
few.
it's you, I'm just
Yeah.
saying, why are we spending time on this?
Residents reached out to us and I sponsored it and Becky did.
Okay. It just seems to be such a minuscule issue that I don't think it's worth the cycles.
Sure.
Councilor.
Well, all the work's been done now. Now you just gotta vote on it.
You can run it for sure.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat with Craig right now on this one. And I will note that just a couple blocks down on my street is one of the little tow yards. And so we frequently have these trucks and everything there. And it is a significant issue in the neighborhood to have these big trucks moving through it. And if you're allowing, a resident to bring that truck through the neighborhood regularly and onto their property, you're going to create problems with those neighbors. And I don't like that this tailors the law to favor a very small subset, a certain kind of business, when we know there are other businesses that operate in Provo for the good of the city, although not with a government contract, either with the food trucks or, your trailers for your audiovisual equipment and things like that, where they are not allowed to park those large things on their property. And when we had looked at those before, the safety justifications that we had for exercising that power as a government was, sight lines. If you've got this in your driveway, then you can't see somebody on the sidewalk. You're creating a dangerous condition potentially by parking a big thing on your own property. And I don't see changing that requirement for this type of vehicle if we're keeping it for the others. Now, if we decide that you should be able to park whatever you want on your own property, which I think is also a defensible position, then I would be in favor of removing those restrictions entirely, but not just for this very small subset.
Yeah.
That doesn't feel fair to me, and it doesn't make sense of those safety justifications. The other thing that I will note is I like the idea of reducing the gross vehicle weight, because those can be a problem on our residential streets. They add additional wear and tear. But if we are encouraging people to bring those heavy vehicles onto their residential streets, I think we're creating a cost for the city. I know one of my neighbors has a very heavy truck, and he drove it through our little alley after a period of wetness and caused substantial damage to the alley, which the city is not going to repair. And we're going to have to raise money to repair that ourselves. But I've seen the cost of these big things in our little residential areas. So I'm not supportive, and another how many people it actually affects, I don't see it.
Okay, well, can we hear from you, Sandy, your opinion on this?
Well, now I'm new to the code enforcement. Code enforcement, I think this started because we did cite a tow truck that was on their property. And it's just kind of brought it up the question, do they need those tow trucks for this 15 minutes? But again, as we were looking, we've only done one in a year.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I'm weighing on. Now, as far as parking enforcement, this 1800, we enforce that. You've seen the citations that we're doing it on the street because of what you said, it moves residential, the streets areas. So I was one, and Heather and I spoke, and I did recommend that we kept it at 1800 across the board.
Sure, to make it uniform.
Yeah.
Also,
And we changed it to the, we changed it down to the lower rated capacity.
Yeah.
14. Yeah.
So I'll also just give context to that. So I talked with Vern when I was looking at what we're going to keep as the standard, regardless of the tow trucks. He just pointed out that this way, 1.5 tons more license, 18,000 pounds gross. That's kind of an outdated way. It was his words to describe a truck of that nature. So after we talked over it, his idea is that definition across the board throughout code will need to be changed at some point. The 14,000 pound weight rating is the upper limit of the Federal Highway Administration's Class 3 medium truck. It's basically the upper limit of most heavy trucks that a person would own as a private citizen. So that's why that number was selected to replace the current language.
I'm not married to this. Like, I see both sides too. And I also, a citizen came and was, it's their livelihood and the things. And so, but there's also the reality of the sight of line and the safety and the nuisance. And it is just one that we know of. Like the number, knowing the stats on, what's been ticketed is, very relevant.
Yeah.
Would we just want to include unless someone wants to take a vote on it? I don't know what you think, Becky. I could go either way, really. But do we want to add the 14,000 to the code rewrite and just include that in that?
That might be, if you're looking for uniformity, that would certainly be the better way.
What do you think, Becky? I did start thinking about worrying like the unevenness, the unfairness of it, and like why that.
I did put it out, and I got 2 responses, because for me, I grew up in a transportation company family, big semis. We never parked our trucks at the house ever. However, my small street gets buses all the time, and diesel trucks all the time. We have heavy public works equipment that goes down all the time, and my street is very quiet. So, to me, and it would affect this guy and his livelihood, but he's not the owner of that. I mean, to me,
The company.
the company owner needs to be
He's an
responsible to have something within 15 minutes that the guy can go pick up
Yeah.
and go around, because that's the way that we run our company. However, I don't like it on the street. I mean, there's even heartburn with when Public Works does stuff with their own equipment and they park it there for a month and
Yeah.
you've got a loader or a backhoe or, and it causes problems with little kids darting out. You can't see that.
Yep.
And so that causes a lot of heartburn. I've seen that over the years. So that's why I was like, not on the street. If this is
Yeah.
gonna happen, it's gotta happen in dude's
For sure.
driveway.
Yeah.
Or chick's driveway. So, like I said, and then when they talked about the fairness, I'm like, let's just bring this to council and just have this conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I don't really,
Yeah.
I'm not married to it either.
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, it's okay.
Yeah, I think there's a good private property rights argument if you could deal with the sight lines and parking away from the sidewalk through other
Which you have to
regulations.
do in the code.
Correct. Yeah, exactly. To just say, if you're below this weight and you're respecting the sight lines for safety, then park whatever kind of vehicle you want. I think that's a reasonable approach, or what we have is a reasonable approach. I agree with Councilor Whipple that I don't
Yeah.
love like the one-off. You could make a similar if we put Tanner on any individual business, he can make a similar argument for why we should create a carve out.
But too, it's kind of a rub that there's only 3 cities that have this restriction, right? Us, Orem, and American Fort. No one else cares. And so maybe
Yeah, I
that
think-
goes.
I do know citizens do care when people have these huge boats and buses and RV, like all these things. That isn't, we've been through this already. When was it, Rachel? Like 3 years ago?
It was fun.
Well, I was on the planning commission when we saw one, but it's oftentimes when they're parked on the street that they become the biggest.
It's even in the driveway. They
Yeah.
have sidewalks. They're always over there. We had to remember.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think if it's like 100% on their property, that's different than if they're like.
Yeah, we
on
did
the
it so they
business.
can go in the back, so it's not, there's a visual aspect, there's a neighborhood. Should we just change the 14,000 in the code thing? Yeah,
Are you okay with 14,000, Sandy, or does it need to be 18,000?
No, I 14,000 would be great. Yes.
What are you seeing that's 18,000?
that's what it used to be.
No, she said it's.
When we, I've had 18,000 for 30 years. Anyway, see, for school buses or anything like that, we've used that when they've parked in the street. Plus, if you read the 9.32090, for these bigger vehicles, they're required to be 30 feet back from all driveways, streets, intersections such as that, where a regular vehicle is only required to be 20 feet. So that kind of keeps these big vehicles off of the street in the residential areas. There's just nowhere for them to park. So, but I think the 1,400 is a great compromise.
14,000.
14,000, thank you.
So
Sorry.
you're not gonna
We'll
see,
get that smaller than.
my point is you're not gonna see a lot of irate 18,000 pound people going, I was okay now, I'm not okay.
I do not think there will be any pushback on it. I could be surprised, but I do not see any.
So my question is, does it make sense to make that change for this part of the code now, or should we just give instruction to part of the whole code rewrite so that we don't have inconsistency within the code?
I would like that. I would appreciate
Okay.
that.
All right.
I can take responsibility for letting Vern know and letting Aaron know, and then Brian's of course here, so.
You have to do a nice, fun control F.
Okay, thanks, Tanner.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, next, a break. We're gonna take a break.
Oh,
We'll just do 5 minutes. All right.
Recording in progress.
All right, 2 more items. A discussion regarding proposed amendments to Provo City Code Section 1437050 related to parking requirement reductions. This will be presented by Tanner Takuchi, our council policy analyst. That's 3 in a row.
yep,
He's on a roll.
it's my thing. All right, so I'm just gonna put up the exhibit here. This item comes in response not from an issue item, but in the discussion that was part of the June 23rd work meeting around the proposal to amend parking requirements in the city. So that item did not move forward to a council night meeting as it was proposed. However, there was talk of a just, discussion, or at one point there was a motion to address some of the concerns presented in the work meeting and to come back with an amendment that would not affect parking standards, but rather shift the responsibility of granting a reduction from the planning commission to the council. So that is what I have prepared to discuss today. And just to clarify, I don't have any information, and part of this analysis was not answering the question of like, do the impact of student cars, or does urban planning impact resident lifestyle. I don't have research on that, but that's certainly something I could pursue as a literature review. This is just talking about the impact of the language you see up here. So as a little bit of background for what we discussed in the June 23rd work meeting, there was a proposal about about parking reductions, and there was a motion made to shift that authority, like I said, from granting a proposal, so taking the required number of parking spaces and then saying that a developer can do a lower amount. That power currently resides with the planning commission. The motion at one point in the meeting was to shift that power to the council. So what effectively it does, Kevin, if you could scroll down, there are currently two methods that the planning commission could use to justify a reduction. The first is in this paragraph 2 in the code. This is to create basically a plan that would reduce parking requirements after a parking study is done. So if there's evidence from a study that says that fewer parking spaces are needed, and they come up with a plan to mitigate any demand for parking, then they can get a reduction. The second option that the planning commission can pursue, or that the developer could pursue when asking the planning commission for a reduction in parking requirements, it's in number 3. Keep going down. Yep, right above the table. On page 3. Yeah, up here. This is number 3. They could institute like a bike parking program, so long-term and short-term bike parking. So what this proposal would do would be to remove those as options, leaving the only way to hypothetically get a reduction in the required number of parking spaces that need to get built is to go to the council during the zoning process and ask for some adjustments in the zone, either as a text amendment, as a new zone, or as an overlay that's created. So that is what this proposal will do. It takes the power away from the planning commission, gives it to the council. And Kevin, if you can scroll all the way back up to the blue text at the top. The language that we're considering as an amendment to the previous proposal would be this blue language here ensures that the agreements that we've already entered into with people who have received a reduction will stay in place after this change is made. So it will keep those legal agreements that they have to continue the programs that they do to try to mitigate the demand for parking going in the future, and that doesn't go away. Currently, there have only been 8 TDMs approved. Those are the plans that allow the planning commission to lower parking requirements. There have only been 8 approved. There are only 6 that are active at the moment. Most of them have parking that is above 90% of the required amount. So that is everything that this does. In my memo, I mentioned that of the mayor council cities that I talked to, only one has eliminated, or does not have, I should say, an administrative way to lower their parking requirements, and we would be joining them.
Which city was that?
That was Ogden. There is no administrative means.
I just wanted to clarify one thing, which, anyway, Tanner said a minute ago that this proposal removes the authority from the planning commission and gives it to the council. That's accurate, but I want to clarify exactly what that means. It doesn't give it to the council in any proactive sense where the council has a methodology to reach out and change parking. It's just inherent in the council's policy in passing new laws that if somebody applies for a new law that would give them different parking standards than the law currently has, it would be in your authority to propose that. But anything more proactive than that would require additional steps beyond what this does, like the creation of an overlay zone or something like
Yeah,
that.
so there's no formal mechanism anymore in the code.
Right, this just removes the formal mechanism.
So a developer would have to abide by the statutory parking standards in 1437. And if they really needed one, they would have to approach a counselor and we'd have to pursue some other form, like Brian mentioned.
Now, at the same time, staff is working on looking at policy where they wouldn't have to have the parking on their exact lot as is currently required, but they could have it on another somewhere else. We are working on something about that. And we're also working on an overlay type zone so that when a project does come to us that we think is worthy of a parking reduction, that there's an overlay zone to use, correct, Bill?
We can do the overlay zone route. We can also do it by development agreement as.
Yeah, so either way, whatever's best on that. So there is, Councilor Bogdan?
My heartburn with the development agreement though is it ends with the certificate of occupancy, right?
It does. We'd have to come up with a new method similar to, I think we could work around it, but I think there are some balancing tests about which method is better. The overlay zone is more work up front, but probably more durable. The development agreement way would have to do something similar to what we've done with the for sale housing, and the development agreement itself would have to require recording of deed restrictions that would continue after the development agreement itself expired.
I'm just more concerned about them getting the zone and then turning around in 20 years and having a mess because now they don't have to go before the council.
Right. Yeah, that's always been for 15 years, that's always been one of my concerns about development agreements is that they rely on institutional knowledge that doesn't always stay in place. We enter into them and then we forget that we have them. Unlike the code.
So your proposal to address that would be?
Well, I think that's up to the council to make a policy decision about, I think the two competing alternatives are, well, there's three competing alternatives. One alternative is just don't do anything and wait for somebody to say, and either say, we're never granting parking exceptions, or wait for somebody to come to you with a specific proposal about how why they need a parking exception and you need to fix it. And the other two are competing alternatives of develop overlay zones or handle it by development agreement. And I think there's pros and cons to the two that we could do a separate presentation on once the council's ready to decide.
Yes, and let's say that we went the development agreement route. You expressed concern about how do you make those stick beyond institutional knowledge.
That's where the deed restrictions go. But again, deed restrictions, even then, we're going to forget that those exist until somebody complains and has a problem and we do a title search to find the deed restriction. But Bill has a comment.
So you started by saying we're gonna have to wait till somebody makes a proposal. That wait's not gonna be very long because Park Plaza is gonna be coming in any day now. In fact, I expected their submittal last weekend and didn't come in. But they'll submit any day now and they're gonna ask to go through the development agreement. If the council's comfortable with that line of thought, I would suggest not only a deed restriction, but we put on their recorded plats language about parking and about these restrictions. So that's very easy to find and very readily available.
Mm-hmm. Great idea.
Okay.
Yeah, so I felt like my obligation here was just to explain what the motion does, not necessarily to do a lot of background information like the other ones. But so as long as you all understand, I think we would need a motion because this is an amendment to the actual proposal.
Councilor Bogdan?
Okay, so I make a motion that we take this to a night meeting.
Okay.
I second that.
All right, any discussion on the motion?
I just
Councilor
a
Whipple?
question on this generally. I'm not comfortable with these changes. Part of my questions are both about current enforcement and the legal things. So I understand that we've got language to try to preserve the TDMs, but we are cutting out the language for subsection 2EIIA, where it's talking about, the annual inspection to make sure that they're compliant with the TA, like how we are continuing to administer the program. That information we're cutting out. And so I'm a little bit worried about that. So this monitoring of the parking lot adequacy on at least an annual basis, and then the mitigation measures, because I do like to have more specific language about our obligation to make sure that they are following the TDI, and then what the remedies are for that. So I'm
Just add that back in.
or TDM, sorry. So I'm still uncomfortable with how much of this is getting cut out with relationship to the existing program. And I did want to ask, you said that there were 8 of these approved and that 6 are active. I do note that the code allows that after 5 years, if there aren't any problems, then we're done. Is that why there are 2 of them that are no longer active?
No, not that I'm aware. The 2 that I'm referring to, one is voided and they withdrew the request.
Okay.
One ended up actually not needing it because the reason they applied for one in the first place was because of a physical constraint on the lot, but they were able to negotiate and get space on an adjoining one. So they actually ended up withdrawing the request.
Yeah, because I like the idea that this program is set up so that we are looking at how this parking reduction has actually affected, if the parking is adequate. And we lose this code set obligation and ability to continue to reevaluate those reductions that were given.
Whipple, if I could just respond to that, I don't think that we do, because the provision that you're mentioning says that the agreement has to include those provisions. So those provisions are in the agreement, even if they're not in the code anymore.
Okay, so we'll be okay for the existing ones.
That's my belief, yes.
And we do know that all of this is within those agreements.
I have not reviewed the agreements. I was counting on the fact that it said that the code says that they must be in the agreements. Bill's nodding his head, but I haven't looked at them. But that's certainly something we could do.
I would need to check specifically.
Okay, and then have we been doing that parking lot adequacy monitoring on an annual basis for the existing ones?
It's been months since I had Sandy go by and do counts, or people go out and do counts in the middle of the night. It's probably been 6 or 8 months since we did the last one.
Okay.
But I have her monitoring this pretty regularly.
Okay.
The other thing I would add, though, is, and part of the reason that I was okay with cutting all of this, in fact, even suggested to Tanner to cut it all, is that, and again, we can fix this if this isn't meeting what you're expecting, but the code doesn't actually say that has to happen. It says it has to be in the agreement. So
Okay.
even with this still in there, it doesn't say that it has to happen. It just says that it has to be in the agreement, and the agreement shouldn't have been valid if that wasn't in the agreement. Does that make sense? Does that distinction make sense?
And is that the same way a development agreement will work effectively?
Essentially,
If we use that method in the future?
yes.
Okay. The other thing that I don't like about this is the only place I think that we have in the code where we have recommendations for bicycle parking, the number of spaces. In another part of the code, we've got the standards for bicycle parking, like what kind of short-term and long-term, but there's no requirement for or recommendation for how many bicycle parking stalls or lockups should be at different types of businesses and things like that. This was developed right here. We have this chart, and I think this is useful. And so I
go to that chart.
Yeah, just
You can go
scroll
ahead.
down a little bit. And so, this is the recommendation for what would be good for the bicycle parking. And if you do this, then you can seek that reduction in car parking. But we don't have any, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but is there any other place where we require bicycle parking or recommend what is an appropriate amount of bicycle parking for different types of businesses?
I don't think so. And in fact, to your point, that's why I remember when this was put in, it's essentially, this was put in as an incentive program, right?
Yes.
I mean, the whole aim of this was, here are the things that we want to incentivize you to do, or potentially incentivize you to do, to reduce the need for parking. So we'll incentivize you by reducing your parking requirement if you do them. I think there might be some bicycle stuff in the open space in the amenities density section, but again, that's a menu of things that they can pick from. It's not the bicycles themselves.
Yeah. And I recognize this isn't a requirement, but this is actually really useful guidance. Like, this is the kind of bicycle parking that's appropriate for these types of businesses and things like that. It's, I think, a useful chunk of a document.
I also don't think though that people having a bike means they don't have a car. Like, I don't think the two are equal. Like, I don't think one means the other. I don't think if you have a bike, it means you don't have a car.
Right, but see, this is not just about apartments and residential. This also has different businesses and what kind of bicycle parking is useful there. So where we're looking.
Yeah, that's what.
Well, and maybe I should ask a question. We're looking at getting rid of the parking reduction primarily for residential things. Are we looking at reducing the parking requirement for businesses?
I'm doing 05.
Or changing?
We're looking at getting rid of the planning commission.
So this is a higher standard than, yeah, so I'm gonna
I
interject.
think that was just addressing residential.
Right, but see, this is also taking out the recommendation for reducing parking requirements for businesses. And with residential, I think we're on firmer ground for insisting that we need a certain number of parking for bedrooms. But I don't know that the standards that we have set for parking for commercial things have that same level of justification. Some of them are things that we have inherited from somebody else's code, but aren't actually related to the actual use or the demand, which is why we end up with big seas of asphalt around businesses that for the mall certainly weren't necessary.
Councilor Whipple, Tanner has pointed out to me that I misspoke, so he's going to correct me.
Oh, good.
Oh, there is a required bicycle parking in the code. It's actually
good.
1437-065.
Oh,
So it's just the section right below the automobile parking section.
Thanks.
And it's the standards to get a reduction appear to be on my cursory review about double what the minimum standard is.
So there's minimum standards, and then if you do more, you can reduce your parking.
Okay, thank you.
And we're only getting rid of, this proposal only gets rid of the additionals, not the minimums.
Yes. Okay, that makes me feel a little bit better about that. And so that takes me to my last thing, and that is, I don't think that it is efficient to make the council do these decisions every time. I think it would be useful to continue to have this as an incentive. And I think it's appropriate to have it with the planning commission or to be an administrative decision. I think as council, sometimes we seek to exercise more micromanaging power and control, and that takes a lot of time, not just our time and our staff time, but applicants' time. There are real financial costs to that. And part of the cost is benefit to our city in delaying or preventing developments that would be good for our residents. So I do not like this change. Thank you.
I know we're in discussion, but I have a couple more questions. Is that okay to ask? One question I have is if anyone was here, you kind of talked to this a little bit, but do we know like what's the history of doing this TDM program? Why other cities do it?
So I don't know. I can't say that other cities have a TDM program exactly like we do. There are, Salt Lake City, for example, has a very extensive list that allows the staff, that guides them very narrowly as to what they can grant a reduction for and sets maximums and stuff like that. As far as I was able to get from my research, the TDM section of the code was added in 2017, and the bike parking avenue for reduction was added in 2019 and modified in 2020. So I don't know if that gets at why, a lot of the why, but that's the timeline basically. That's all.
In 2017, we had council members who thought the code should be amended to allow this opportunity.
What was the discussion of the driving motivation?
I don't know that I remember exactly what brought it up. I will say, and this kind of piggybacks to some extent off of Councillor Whipple's statement or comments, is that I do agree that to the extent exceptions to legal requirements are going to be granted, the normal method for granting them is through administrative processes. So I think that, so as I recall, that was what was happening, is that there were so many people, there were a lot of projects that were coming in and they were asking for lower parking, and every one of them came in and had, here's what we're going to do in order to justify our parking. This is why our parking needs to be lower. And because we didn't have a methodology for granting those, it wasn't happening. It was mostly happening through people applying for pro zones, right? And at some point, I think my recollection is that some of the council said, well, we think that there are situations where if they are doing enough to mitigate parking demand, that they ought to be able to have the parking reduced. So let's create a method for doing that. And I do agree that the normal way for doing that kind of thing is through administrative processes. And so the question, normally the question is, when you think that when the legislative body thinks that an administrative process isn't achieving the goals, the first question usually to ask is, well, are the criteria wrong? Do we need to fix the criteria so that the administrative process does achieve the goals that we're trying to achieve? Or, similar to kind of what's happening now, is the administrative process itself undermining the goals and it just needs to be gotten rid of? It certainly makes sense to get rid of it if you think that it's not meeting the goals. So
thank you. And then I have a question for you, Director Pepperoni. We've only had, you're currently six. Eight have approved historically. How many have been requested? Do we have?
I don't have that data. The reason is because if they were not approved, they would just be recorded in the minutes of a planning commission meeting. And I certainly could try to do that.
No, we don't.
But there are 247 over the past 5 years.
No, please do not spend your time on that. I was just curious. But I am curious because when I speak to developers, I just had lunch last week with one that I used to be in the same ward of, and is a friend. They always tell you the cost of parking is one of the most, the biggest barriers to development right now, especially with high interest rates. So I'm curious, why don't we see more requests for this? I'm just curious if you have any professional judgment on that question.
I think Board Attorney out that Planning Commission was very hesitant to approve them. The apartment building right by the stadium, remember that one went through? You may have been on the Planning Commission.
Yeah, I think I was.
Yeah, I think they just felt like asking for a zone change and a parking reduction both was going to make it hard to get their project approved. So they never even asked for one. So we haven't had a request for a parking reduction in quite a while.
Do you think it's possible that by removing this, we may get more requests or there might be more coming through to the city council?
To me, what we're experiencing right now is a drop off in applications, a drop off in projects between the cost of parking you have referred to and the interest rates. We haven't had an apartment proposal in a while. So to me, it's more of that.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Whipple.
So I'd like you to help me understand or to correct my understanding of the history. But I think with like the element or some other projects that were approved with the reduction, we did see problems with on-street parking afterwards. And that after that, there was different guidance from development services to applicants to help them maybe not request the maximum thing, like to actually tailor what you believe the project would need to not be a nuisance to the neighborhood. And so there wasn't, it's not like everybody was able to get everything that they could potentially ask for. that's not a right that they would have even with this code.
Correct. If you go back and look at the actual ones that were approved, and maybe Tanner has this information, most of the ones that were granted were pretty minor.
Yeah.
They weren't significant or large reductions they were asked for. 400 element did not ask for a reduction, is my recollection. We still have had cases though, where those that received, reductions have experienced spillover parking on adjacent streets.
Yeah. So would it make sense to adjust this program to deal with that better, or is it just get rid of it entirely?
Well, that was kind of the direction that Aaron's amendment was going a few weeks ago, was to allow the reduction in places where there wouldn't be spillover parking because of the nature of that location and the surrounding streets. We tried to come up with criteria that allowed the reduction, but got out ahead of these impacts that we were experiencing in other cases.
So the earlier proposal was a way to address problems, that we had seen in implementing the program.
Yes.
But still meet the need of developers and our community to have more housing.
Yes, because I think this is the single biggest factor that's holding back more student housing is this parking ratio. And that's why when you see Park Plaza, the project won't happen if they don't get a reduction. They'll end up reselling the property, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, I want that property to be redone. Okay, thank you.
Right. Counselor Hoban.
Well, I'm okay with addressing the Park Plaza, but I don't like the broadness of this. So
To us, so we can address it.
I agree that we need to address it. We don't want that opportunity to go away. I guess I don't feel like, 6 to 10 of these are currently in the works. I don't feel like that's too much to ask council to do. I mean, we just spent an hour discussing one tow truck a year. So I think we could
one of our finest moments.
I think we could oh, well, do you remember how much time we spent on dog poop? I don't know if you remember that. That was maybe prior to your time. So I think we could prioritize our time. I'm okay with kind of pulling this back to the council. I don't like the broadness of enacting the currently proposed, and I am okay bringing it back. I just wanted to make my stance kind of clear.
Okay, ready to take a vote on the motion?
Sure. Yeah.
All right.
Can I say one more thing?
Mm-hmm.
I think I'd be okay with, I am okay with this, but I hope it's in the spirit of, by bringing these to us more, we're going to be able to wrestle with the trade-offs and the issues and potentially come with a better policy framework moving forward. And if that's how we're approaching this, I think it could be a really good long-term solution.
And that's absolutely my hope as well. I would much rather be surgical about this. I have more confidence in our ability to do it. So I am willing to micromanage it because I think it's that important. The spillover, easy for us to do that in someone else's neighborhood. When that happens in your neighborhood and there's spillover, people get ticked. So I want to advocate for those people and make sure that we do something that really makes sense, but we've got to figure this out. Now, I would also have to say, Bill, you made the comment that this is the biggest factor. The biggest factor, I think, is actually the economy. I think it's interest rates. That's the biggest factor. This actually goes way down and is a factor, but there's so many macro issues that to put all those macro issues into parking, and if we just solve this, we'd have a lot more development. That is not true. Vacancies are at very high rates. And so there's much more to it. And I feel more confident in our ability to address that surgically than I do with a broad handed over to the administrative process.
And there's still just the huge deal that people are obviously paying too much for land if they can't do the parking that's required in code right now. That's on them. Don't pay too much for your land. If everybody was honest about what's required in the code and how much that costs, then the land would be X amount of dollars and they wouldn't overpay for it. But they overpaid for it trying to upzone it trying to get parking reductions. And that's not a burden we should be putting on our citizens. So word has to get out there that stop overpaying for your land. And this is what it's worth. And if you can't develop it, then it's not worth what you're paying for it.
Let's vote.
All right. Councillor McKay, yes. Councillor Christensen.
Yes.
Councillor Whitlock.
Yes.
Councillor Bogdan.
Yes.
Councillor Hoban.
Yes.
Councillor Whipple.
No.
And Councillor Garrett.
Yes.
And that passes 6-0.
6-1.
Sorry, 6-1.
Chair.
All right. Yes.
Hope the council will move forward that amendment to allow us to count off-site parking
Yeah.
for residential.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I think that's great. And I'm excited about that.
Good.
And I want to bring BYU into that discussion.
So just quick question. So that will be, do we need to do this in a night meeting?
Yes,
So
the
that
motion was
is
just to move it
this
to
to the night meeting. Thanks.
All right, next a discussion regarding external accessory dwelling units presented by Malia Daly, our council policy analyst.
Okay, great. This is a follow-up from the June 9th work meeting. Would have been in the June 23rd, but I was not here. So
Where were you? Well,
yeah, I was just out for 3 weeks. Okay, I don't have any slides for this. What we did, I worked with development services and legal based on the motions from that last meeting to adjust the privacy concerns for new external ADUs and existing under code. And then we also included some changes to the chapter based on state requirements. So there's 5 things here I'm just going to walk through. And then at the end, if there's any questions, if not, then what would happen, I would imagine after this meeting, if there's no additional amendments, is I would send this version to development services and legal, and they would incorporate it into the zoning rewrite that's going to planning commission, I think next month. And then it'll come to us in the fall. And so this would just be included within that. So anyway, now we'll go through those. This first one here at the bottom, this first amendment, this one is a very nicely worded thing that Brian did to allow external ADUs as they exist currently in our code within that allowed map and the other specified areas, but then also in addition to those, okay, well, we can't go back. So in addition to those, also external ADUs are allowed in the areas that the state is mandating. So that's all that is just compliance with state code. So that's the first one. The second change didn't change from the June 9th work meeting. This is just that first motion the council made, which is parcel coverage. So that's here. This is just the primary dwelling and any other accessory structures can't cover 40%. So that didn't change. And then I'll also go down to the other motion that didn't change, which is the utility hookup. This didn't change from June 9th. This is just saying that utilities, whether connected to the primary dwelling or separate, will be an administrative based on Public Works is reviewing the plans, what would be best for our system. The one that did change based on the discussion that we had on the June 9th meeting is the issue of privacy. Originally, in June 9th, we came back with an amendment that said if you have to have your height less than the main dwelling and less than 25 feet. And for every foot, if your accessory dwelling unit is above 16 feet, every foot that is above, it also has have an additional foot setback. We had a discussion how that might affect current existing areas that allow external dwelling units. For example, pioneer neighborhoods where they have unique parcels. They might not be 11,000 square foot, but they still could fit one. We don't want them to make subject to this these new requirements. So we kind of have 2 separate requirements here. This is just saying for those detached ADUs that are permitted under the new state code, they are subject to that. If it's over 1 story, it has to have additional setbacks.
So that's what we're talking about with.
Yes.
Okay.
But if they're not subject to that, they're not addition to that, then they're kind of under the existing.
Great.
So does everyone understand?
Yeah.
We're good with that? Okay.
Well,
We
I'm
need to
similar
say-
situation.
Way to use your.
I very much appreciate how this was structured. I think that was well done and it addresses those concerns.
You did a great job, Lee.
I
It's
still
Brian,
opposed to
but
it,
yeah.
but I appreciate that this is very well done and meets what the council as a whole is asking for.
I say that's genius to get something personally benefiting you, yet not voting for it. It's like, I didn't vote. I'm kicking my way for anybody whose grandmas or watches our meeting or whatever. Oh, Joe.
Yeah, Councilor Whipple, can I ask why you're still opposed to it?
So the reason I would still be opposed to it is because it does make it more restrictive and more difficult for these properties that the state has said should be allowed to do this, to go ahead and meet that goal. That's really it.
So specifically just referring to the setback requirement.
Yes. Yeah, so and I recognize that the city does have the right and the obligation to do what they can to make sure that the laws that are handed to us from the state actually work within our city and that we're continuing to protect our residents and their quality of life and things like that. And I recognize that that's what my fellow councilors are trying to do. I have a different perspective and maybe a slightly different set of priorities based on my neighbors that we're talking to. And so I disagree that this does do that. Yeah, so it's just a difference of opinion because I'm differently situated.
But your neighbors still have what they want and
Yes,
you know that other
yes,
neighborhoods don't.
because, yeah, and I recognize that these height restrictions are because many people have raised concerns about having something tall looking over another person's backyard. And I am very grateful that this has been structured so that it doesn't make what was already the right to do a detached ADU in properties where this would be impossible. It doesn't take that right away from them. So I really am appreciative. I just think that we should make it easier for people to be able to build these on their properties throughout the city. And that's just a fundamental different policy position that you all know I have. So, that's it. But I really am grateful for all of you for working through this so that it meets your goals and I think reduces the harm that I brought to your attention. So again, I'm so grateful.
Okay, the next change we'll go to here is parking. This is put in because the state, if you remember, the state is limiting what we can require for parking for those new external dwelling units to 2 off-street if the unit is 650 square foot or larger, or just 1 if it's 650 square foot or less. Brian very smartly just had us reference state code, so if those parking requirements change, then it automatically is updated and we don't have to come back here. So, and then the final line, if you notice this final line, this is just to clean up. This also mentions utilities being in a separate name. That may or may not happen depending again on the administrative input of Public Works, depending on utilities.
Oh, so we haven't got their okay on that yet.
No, we have. This is just cleaning up code so that way earlier it says it can be whatever and this says no, it has to be separate. So it's just to mirror earlier in the section. Yes.
Council Whitlock.
Can you just remind me of one thing you just said? I want to make sure I recall correctly is if it's over 650 square feet, we can't require more than 2 stalls.
Right.
You can only require 2 off-street parking.
Okay.
So they're, yeah.
Under the new external dwelling units that are permitted through state code.
Okay.
So there's like a bunch of different ADUs that are now allowed under chapter 1443. I want to make a chart when this is all done, so it's
Yeah.
very easy, because at neighborhood meetings, sometimes it does get confusing trying to just explain
The
it
chart would be
verbally.
great.
So a chart would be very helpful.
Counselor Bogdan.
That brings up a question. We have to have this passed by,
October
October?
1st.
so would you be able to have a chart available to add to this so that it can just be
Well, yeah, we can put a
adopted all together?
I would recommend not putting a chart in code, because then if we have to update anything or state code updates, then our code would be out of date.
Okay.
I was
gotcha.
just thinking a chart we can push out on social media or in neighborhood meetings. ADUs come up a lot, that we can just easily reference and give people kind of a quick cheat sheet in addition to the code.
Gotcha. Okay. Thanks.
So if there's no discussion on these, this is really just the only change here. Then, like I said, we'll just forward this on to Development Services, who will include it in the zoning rewrite, and then it'll be part of that package later this fall.
We have just, this will be answered by the chart, but basically the internal ADUs that were previously allowed by ADU, the old ADU overlay
Yeah.
zone, actually have more restrictive off-street parking requirements than these new ADUs.
Yes.
All right, so I'll make a motion that we just bring this to a night meeting.
Well, we'll just put it in the zoning rewrite, and then it'll
Great.
just be part of that. It'll
Great.
just be one less planning
have to do a
application
motion for
to
that?
push through.
No, I think we're good. We good?
Yeah, I don't, if you want to make a motion, but I
I-
think that was our
You're
intent.
done.
Okay, great. Perfect.
Thank you. That was great.
Yeah, nicely done.
Nicely done.
All right, thanks, everyone. If there's no, we do not have a closed meeting, correct? If no objection, we'll now adjourn the Provo Municipal Council by unanimous consent.
Great.
I'm bragging.
Recording stopped.
It's 7:30. I mean, 7 a.m.
Okay, what did you see that?
Where's
Where did you see that?
I just